chonky Godzilla movie marathon where we're stomping through Godzilla's filmography. I'm Derek, and I've seen all the Godzilla movies.
And I'm Doug, and I've seen 16 Godzilla movies.
And we're talking about the 30th film in the Godzilla franchise, the second Godzilla film to be completely produced by a Hollywood studio in America, and the first film in the current legendary Monsterverse, 2014's American Godzilla. Also known as, of course, Gojira in Japan. This was released in the US on May 16th, 2014. Directed by Gareth Edwards, written by Max Borenstein with a story by David Callahan, and visual effects by Jim Rigel, and a score by Alexandre Desplat. And of course, we'd like to take a quick moment to thank our spectacular patrons, Bo, Carl, Katie, Jason, Zoe, James, Keith, Cody, Toby, Hamish, and Troidal Power.
Thank you.
So Doug, this is one that you have seen before, right?
This is one that I have seen before. It wasn't one that I remembered a ton about, which people might remember based on some of the prediction questions you asked me. I suspect that I probably, if I had to guess when I watched this, it definitely was not in the theater. I probably watched this maybe like with Vicky from Novel Gaming, because Vicky's a Godzilla fan. And I'm guessing that I watched it with her or watched it because of her or something like that. And as a result, like, was kind of paying attention, but I wasn't like into Godzilla. So, yeah, you know, if it wasn't going to immediately grab my attention, and I don't know that this one necessarily would have, I don't know that I was going to remember a whole lot from it.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really interesting one in like the scope of Godzilla as a franchise and Godzilla history in the meta sense, and like in the movie like world sense, like the world of cinema and cinematic universes and stuff. Like, I think it's a really interesting kind of cross section between like many different types of conversations people across like the you know, film fans and kaiju fans and Japanese cinema fans and American cinema fans. Like, all of those are different conversations that I think come into play for what's happening in 2014 and what's happening now, that I think is really interesting. And it's interesting that this is the movie that a lot of these things start with, I think, like, given what this movie is in some ways.
Yeah, it's funny because as I was watching this movie, I was sort of thinking to myself, like, I don't know that I'm going to have like big things to say about this one. But the moment the movie stopped and I was just like left thinking about it, I was like, actually, I do have like things to say about this, and I can't stop thinking about certain elements of it. And the reason I say this is because one of the first things I thought of was exactly that relationship of like, this is an American movie happening at a very specific time in relation to a Japanese franchise that we fucked up once already. You know what I mean? It is a fascinating thing to just think about.
Yeah. And then knowing that, you know, this isn't a one and done thing, like this does end up sparking a cinematic universe, you know?
Yeah, and one where like the most recent entry as we record this is the new Empire, which gives a very different vibe than the movie we just watched.
Well, that is a thing. That is, yes. So I think my general take on this movie is I like it almost in spite of itself sometimes. There's a lot of things that I think are deeply flawed about this movie, but I do also think that it is a very, very well made Godzilla movie. Like, it's like, we'll talk about it, but I think like from a technical sense and from just making a action movie with a giant monster, all that shit works like gangbusters in this movie.
Yes.
Most of the problems that I have are like character things and things like that I don't like about it. And maybe some thematic stuff, but like as just an action movie, if you want a good Hollywood blockbuster with a giant monster in it, nails that shit like A+.
I'm so glad you chose for us to watch this immediately after Emmerich's, because I feel like what I was saying in that episode is like, if Roland Emmerich were allowed to make a movie now or within the last decade, it wouldn't be this, because this is like way more artistic than like Emmerich gets, but the scale and scope of this, you know what I mean? As like an American special effects movie, is such a fascinating thing to compare to what they made 20 years prior.
It is. And then it's also interesting looking back on what this movie is, and then, once you have seen that cinematic universe that comes after it, like you were saying, I think this is an interesting one to like go back to. And I know, like, in the canon of this podcast, we haven't watched beyond this, so we're going to talk about this as it is. But I do think living in 2025, it is hard to separate it from the knowledge of it being a cinematic universe in a time when like everyone's a little bit burnt out on cinematic universes. And I think the Monsterverse as it stands, I think is an interesting thing, because on one hand, I think that it is a thing that a lot of people look to as like one of the few franchises that tried to like replicate the MCU and actually was kind of able to pull it off. Like they were like, we want to make a cinematic universe, and they actually have done it like successfully, and that the movies have been successful. And like people,
there's so few. It's like this and The Conjuring.
Right. And it's sort of like, whether the reviews for the movies individually are good or not, generally it's just sort of like, if people don't like the movie, it's because they maybe don't like an individual movie, not because they're tired of the cinematic universe of it all. Whereas pretty much every other thing that's tried to do a cinematic universe, especially on this scale, has just like fallen flat on their face before it can even get started, So I think that's interesting. But then there's also the side of things where like, I think the Monsterverse is very divisive, like a lot of people who really fucking love it, and there's a lot of people who really fucking hate it. And and there's a lot of interesting things mixed up about it of being an adaptation of a Japanese franchise, which America doesn't have a great history with. Yeah. So there's a lot of interesting angles to it. And I think some of that will come into play in conversation with this movie and how it adapts things and deals with the kind of Japan of it all. But I am also like really excited for post this movie, Monsterverse movies that we do, when they start shifting and leaning into the cinematic universe of it all. Because I do think things change pretty drastically. And I think it will be a very, very different kind of conversation for the types of movies that they're trying to make after this one.
Well, and I don't know. I don't know about the Monsterverse really. Like I don't even remember what the movies between this and the New Empire are. But I do think it's interesting. And so I say this not knowing that. That's why what I'm about to say, I want to preface with that. But one thing that's fascinating not knowing that is knowing that you go from this movie, which is like a pretty like serious, bleak, sort of like artsy sort of movie as much as it can be. And it at some point transforms into like a colorful, wild action movie where the characters are sort of like these mascot heroes. And like that's not that unlike what we talk about when we talk about like the Showa era journey. So like there's something fascinating there. I'm not saying that they are necessarily comparable, but I do think it would be I think to not think about it at least a little bit is to ignore something that does exist.
I don't think you're the only one who's made that argument. And I mean,
okay.
But again, for the listeners, just to be very clear, obviously the premise of this podcast is that Doug hasn't seen Godzilla movies, but like New Empire just happens to be one that you did see in theaters because
I did.
It came out after we started. The podcast. You've seen the Godzilla movies that have come out after we started already.
Yeah. I've seen the New Empire and -1.
We're like not really counting that like in the premise. Like other than those, no other Godzilla movie that we're going to be covering is one that Doug has seen after Shin, I guess. So
yeah. So I mean, imagine the fact that I've seen this one and I've seen the beginning and end in like of what is current in the Monsterverse and nothing in between. And imagine that being like, here's where it started and here's where it is.
Hilarious.
It's kind of confusing and wild, like what I can tell you is they do not feel like they are of the same universe, but I'm sure there is a transformation along the way that maybe is a little bit less abrupt or jarring,
Well, I think that's good. That's a good foreshadowing for future movies that we're going to talk about. But today we're talking about this movie, which is kind of its own beast. No pun intended. But to put us in a point in time, we kind of mentioned it already, but like 1998 movie was a catastrophe, halted any American produced Godzilla stuff.
Rightfully so.
But we also know it jump-started the Millennium era of the movies, which we've seen a few of at this point. But by about 2004, that era of Toho movies, just as every era has naturally done, that it's just sort of wound down. Like Godzilla, you know, by the last Godzilla movie of the Millennium Era, like it's not making as much money. They're like, we're going to put it on a hiatus again.
Sure.
Same thing they plan to do with the Heisei era. So they're like, we're not going to make another Godzilla movie for like at least 10 years. And spoiler, like this movie is 10 years after they, you know, do that hiatus, right? So, but, you know, TriStar's rights to America had already lapsed by about 2004 or so. So filmmaker Yoshimitsu Banno, who we have not talked about, but he does write and direct Godzilla vs. Ghidorah, which we are going to talk about later this year. So that's going to be its own conversation. We are going to talk about this guy much more substantially in a few months.
Cool.
But just so you know, it is someone who has worked on Godzilla before, manages to secure the rights from Toho to make his own independent short film. He wants it to be a remake of his Ghidorah movie. It would be a 3D IMAX movie called Godzilla 3D to the Max.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sure it would have been fun.
Yeah, I'm sure it would have. I'm trying to like put myself in time as to like when 3D hit its like most recent peak, and this would have been like slightly after that, right? Wasn't Avatar 2009 or something like that?
Yeah, this is kind of but this is around like the early 2000s that he's doing it.
Oh,
so
right.
This is when it's ramping up.
That actually makes perfect sense. Yeah.
So it's around 2007 is when he gets American filmmakers to start working with him, including producer Brian Rogers, who is credited as a producer on this movie. And he and his American crew that he assembles turns to Legendary Pictures to fund it. And at this point, to put this in time, you know, the mid 2000s era for Legendary is when they're in the midst of producing stuff like Batman Begins and The Dark Knight and 300, like big budget blockbuster reinventions of comic book stuff from genre things. It does actually make a lot of sense that they would be interested in a Godzilla thing. Yeah. They agree. And by 2010, they have now obtained the rights from Toho themselves through Banno as an intermediary. So now Legendary has the rights. They're on board. They partner with Warner Brothers. And as two big giant studios, they're like, well, if you know, we two cash cows have the rights to Godzilla, then maybe instead of doing a short film, we'll just do a full-fledged production. And then the project then just evolves into an actual reboot of the Godzilla franchise. So just kind of a natural progression here. I also think, you know, I timing wise, like Guillermo del Toro is kind of getting Pacific Rim off the ground, like parallel to this. So there's obviously like this, I think there's a feeling of like openness to giant monster movies. Like people are like, what if we had a giant monster? And everybody's sort of like, I mean, yeah, actually, like the vibe is just right for whatever reason, you know? So I think that helps the sort of hype for it. And I also think the other side of it that's really important that comes up in a lot of interviews when you hear, you know, actors and everyone involved talk about the movie is that like everyone is so hyper aware of that 1998 Emmerich movie and the situation around it. So like a lot of decisions made on this movie are very much in direct conversation with that one. Like, like, you know, that movie, they claim they're taking it seriously, but really they didn't like
not even
Godzilla.
A little bit.
They didn't take it seriously. It was basically a comedy movie. So this movie will take the subject matter seriously. It will take Godzilla as a concept seriously. It is going to have other monsters for Godzilla to fight. That was decided like right from the get-go. They were going to make the design more in line with like the spirit of Toho's Godzilla. Obviously, you know, it's going to be their own take, but like still have atomic breath, not something so radical. It's still going to be something that you would recognize as a Godzilla design, even if it's a new take. So, and all of these, I think, you know, on one hand, it's all stuff that like fans are clamoring for, but I think it's also like all of that's just the right decision, especially if you are trying to distance yourself from the 1998 movie. Like I agree with all of those decisions. I think all of that makes sense.
Yeah. And I remember when this movie started marketing and being like, whoa, holy shit. Like this is like cool and serious and like intense, you know what I mean? Which is like a just completely different vibe than what 1998 leaves you with. Yeah.
And again, I think they knew that. And I think that's why they end up seeking who they end up getting to direct on it, actually. So I want to talk about the director, Gareth Edwards, a little bit. So he's pretty well known now. He would, after this movie, he would go on to direct stuff like the Star Wars movie. Rogue One, obviously, is his big thing. He's going to direct the next Jurassic World movie, apparently. But this Godzilla movie was his big breakout in Hollywood. Beforehand, he had spent about 10 years working on special effects in television, and then helmed his first feature, the 2010 British alien kaiju movie Monsters. Have you seen this movie, Doug?
I have not seen this movie, and I forgot that it existed until I looked up who directed this, and it mentioned monsters, and I was like, oh!
I would recommend it. I watched it the other day. It is very, very, very good. I think it's really funny. When you read, sometimes people will be like, it's so surprising that they got this like indie filmmaker, like who never directed a big budget blockbuster before to direct this big Godzilla movie. And you watch this fucking movie. It's like, yeah, because the guy directed a kaiju movie on like a shoestring budget and made it look really good.
Yeah.
Like,
no one's better than him.
Right. Like that's exactly who you want for this.
Right.
And like took the subject matter like seriously, you know? So it's like, if they're trying to get someone who will do an artful Godzilla movie that takes it seriously and is going to make it look good, which is another thing that like the Emmerich movie was sometimes criticized for, was how that Godzilla looked. Like that's exactly who you want to get for it, right? So just like be like, do what you did in that movie, but like here's more money to make it even bigger, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, that film, it had a lot of notoriety at the time because he had put it together using like standard equipment, off the shelf computer software. Most of it was improvised. It was done with guerrilla filmmaking. Edwards did the effects himself, about $500,000. And if you fucking watch it, it looks spectacular. You specifically would like it because of the animals the kaiju are based off of.
Okay.
I would say. And you know, and I think also like that movie comes out a year after James Cameron's Avatar comes out. So a lot of writing about that movie that you'll find is like comparing it or contrasting it really directly to that, being like, you know, Cameron with all the money in the world made this like, you know, big CGI spectacle and everything with like the most expensive movie ever. And then this British guy over here with like no money made something with like special effects that are like on par with it for like zero money. And like, that's just sort of interesting. Right. So all of that makes so much sense for how he ends up getting involved in this movie and then approaches it the way that he does.
Yeah. It's interesting too. I'm glad you brought up Avatar because, like, this is a weird thought, but for whatever reason I was thinking it. Like, the sort of Japanese special effects filmmaking that is, like, born of Godzilla versus the modern American special effects filmmaking that this film was born into are, like, fascinating things to think about. And I do think that, like, this Godzilla movie... in a weird alternate universe is like exactly what would have happened if Godzilla didn't exist until this moment. You know what I mean? Like it feels, I know he's not American, but it feels very much like an American sort of thing, but like done well, just like thinking of it separately from what we know of Godzilla from the very beginning, if that's even possible.
No, but you know, I don't know that like a lot of the things that I love about Toho's Godzilla aren't really present in this Godzilla at all. Really, like there's passing references to nuclear stuff, but like it's not really that big of a part of the movie. So to your point, like this could just be a kaiju movie that isn't Godzilla, that just has a dinosaur like radioactive kaiju, and it would work. I think you know, like it doesn't really even have to be Godzilla.
But specifically the fact that this does have those sort of like spectacle moments and that sort of artistic vision, I think would mean that it would still end up standing out and people would be like, holy shit, did you see that Godzilla movie? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's weird. There's like a weird, I don't know. It's like a strange thing to think about this as like an alternate universe situation.
I mean, it's an impossible thing to think out because then it's sort of like, well, Godzilla did kind of invent kaiju, so you can't like,
exist out of context, right?
You kind of can't say that happened.
That's true. Yeah, that makes like, a lot of sense.
There wouldn't be any kaiju movie probably in a sense without it. So I don't know.
Right.
But to your point, you know, it's like I think that on the technical side and the way that this movie is made, it is a very Western way of making a movie. And so it's just interesting. It's interesting to view it from that lens because then it's sort of the question of sort of like, well, then like, is this a fucking Godzilla movie?
Well,
you know?
you end up with a similar situation to the last American Godzilla movie, which is like, okay, that was like, okay, is this a good disaster movie or a good Roland Emmerich movie? And also, is this a good Godzilla movie? This one feels sort of like, is this a good Godzilla movie? And also, is this a good action, like a
Right.
Western special effects
Yeah.
action movie, you know?
I think it's, you can spiral into questions of like what makes Godzilla Godzilla, which I think
course.
is a harder question to answer than you think it would be, just because of how many, at this point, over 70 years, how many different versions there have been. And like, how much of it are you saying is like a valid interpretation versus a not valid interpretation? And like, can you even make that determination if they exist and are called Godzilla, you know?
Well, and like the closer those interpretations get to one another in any given way, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It also doesn't matter because this movie is called Godzilla and he's Godzilla whether we like it or not. So, you know, and I like this guy. I like this Godzilla. I think
too.
he's great.
Yeah.
So it's fine. But yeah, so with Edwards on board, I think that really kind of, I mean, the script is being worked on before he comes on board, but I think the real tone and vibe of it, I think, is very much because of him, because he's the one who comes on and decides on this sort of restrained approach. He was very inspired by like anticipation and suspense that you would see in stuff like Alien and Jaws and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where it's like, we're going to hold Godzilla back for most of the movie. It's going to be like an hour before you really see him, specifically so the payoff can be more satisfying, right? Because you're waiting for him for a long time. You know that it's coming. You're waiting for it to happen. Then it can be spectacular when it finally does. And there's a quote that he says, I felt that in modern cinema, it's so easy to just throw everything at the screen constantly. We tried to make a blockbuster that harkens back to the pace and style of early 80s and late 70s action movies.
Sure.
And
you can tell.
You know, yeah. I mean, that's the thing people complained about, is that they felt like this movie was too slow. It takes so long to get to Godzilla. But that's also a thing that I think if a lot of modern audiences, sometimes they go back to movies from the 70s and 80s and complain that they're too slow, you know, I think that is just, you know, recalibrating yourself away from how a lot of, you know, current movies are edited and paced now, you know.
That is funny though, because like this movie is slower than its contemporaries, but it's not nearly as slow as the movies it's inspired by.
It's not.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's actually paced, I think, very well.
I think it's paced. It's not as slow as some, like, you know, Japanese Godzilla movies that we watch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And he also, you know, decides on a very human-centered approach in this, right? So I think, unlike what the Monsterverse eventually becomes, where it's, you know, a lot of monster fighting, he's very much kind of in the mindset similar to a lot of early Japanese Godzilla movies, where, like, you know, you want to be seeing a lot of stuff from the point of view of humans, right? So he says he intentionally places humans in shots to get the scene, a sense of scale, because it's, everyone knows the size of a human. It's harder to do that comparison with buildings necessarily. So we want to see a lot of humans, you know, against this destruction and against these monsters. And also that they wouldn't place a camera anywhere that it would be impossible to get one. So you can sort of get the effect of like a news story, like a cameraman, you know, you see a lot of shots that are like through goggles or like, you know, there's like, I think kind of an infamous bit where like, as soon as Godzilla starts fighting MUTO, the door's shut and it goes to black because it was all from the perspective of Elizabeth Olsen watching it. So you don't actually get to see the fight because she's not seeing the fight, right?
Yeah.
And it isn't really until the very end of the movie that they give you an opportunity to just see like a helicopter's eye view of the monsters fighting.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if nothing else, and I don't think there is nothing else, but if nothing else, this movie gets scale like incredibly
really well.
Like it communicates scale amazingly.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of writers on this movie, there's I know I listed 2 at the top, but there's quite a few that worked on it, and they're all pretty interesting. So the initial story of the movie, the earliest draft, was written by David Callahan. I think it was before Edwards came on. So he wrote the 2005 adaptation of Doom and the Expendables. So I think they bring him in to write this script because he's an action movie writer, right? So, you know, he did research on Godzilla, he did animal documentary research, he researched natural disasters and like local government disaster planning. So he was trying to focus on like, you know, depicting real life disaster events as much as possible, right?
I respect it.
I don't know how much of his original script ends up in this movie, but I
Sure.
think the framework of focusing on the disaster element probably comes from him, you know?
Sure.
Max Borstein comes in and rewrites the final draft of the script. He's the one who gets the screenplay credit. He interestingly didn't really have that much of a way of completed projects to his name by this point. He was someone who was just kind of a very promising up and comer, I think. Like he had made a student film at Yale that won like a Best Picture and Best Screenplay at the New York Independent Film Festival. He had a couple of screenplays on the Blacklist, which, like, if you don't know, that's the survey of like most liked not produced screenplays. So, you know, he was someone that hadn't made a movie yet, like hadn't made a real movie yet, but like it was very clear that he would, and everyone was just helping him make a real movie, basically. So it makes sense why he ends up on this. But a lot of punch ups and polishes were done by really interesting guys. Like Drew Pearce, who wrote Iron Man 3 and ends up writing The Fall Guy, worked on a rewrite. David S. Goyer for a couple weeks. He wrote the Dark Knight trilogy, he wrote the Blade trilogy, wrote a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
I think he works with Nolan a lot. He polished it for a few weeks. He's uncredited. And Frank Darabont, who's the writer of Shawshank Redemption, Green Mile, The Mist, a bunch of other stuff. I think he co-created the Walking Dead TV show. He was a script doctor on it, and he apparently is credited for specifically taking a pass to develop the characters and emotions rather than any of the monster stuff, basically.
Oh, that's actually really interesting. I mean, it's not... It makes sense with the things you cited, but most of the things you cited, if not all the things you cited, are like Stephen King adaptations in some way,
I didn't even
shape,
think
or
about
form.
that. Yeah, I mean, that's
So,
just
like,
the ones. That's the ones that I pulled. He's worked on more than just that.
Well, they're probably like,
but those are the
probably
big ones.
some of the ones that are biggest or that he's most known for. You know.
Yeah. But yeah, so, you know, it's not uncommon, but it was, you know, for Hollywood, a lot of hands touch this, but it's an interesting assortment.
Especially for something like this, I would imagine.
Yeah. So it's still an interesting assortment of people that sort of touch the script. So, effects, Jim Rajiel, did the effects for this movie, and he is best known for his work on the Lord of the Rings movie trilogy. So, like,
well, if you're gonna get somebody who worked on Lord of the Rings, you know.
Yeah. So, and I mean, I don't have a lot to say really about it. They use a lot of traditional stuff. I'll talk about the way this Godzilla was performed and stuff, but like, you know, it's pretty traditional. He said the effects. He did try to make the effects in the spirit of the original series. I think, you know, trying to make the monsters as man in suit as they could possibly be, right?
Yeah.
You know,
totally.
Yeah. And the score, Alexandre Desplat is a French composer. He had won Oscars for his scores to the Grand Budapest Hotel and The Shape of Water. He does afterwards, but he'd done a ridiculous amount of scores for like a ton of movies. Like he's one you go to his IMDb and it's just like nonstop. He's done stuff ranging from like art house indie movies and Oscar movies like The King's Speech, Fantastic Mr. Fox, Little Women, to like genre blockbusters like Harry Potter movies. He did Twilight, New Moon. Like,
look. None of that surprises me based on the sound of this movie and the way that music is used in this movie.
Yeah. It's a good score.
I would have been surprised if it was like a nobody. You know what I mean?
Sure. And he joins it for the same reason that a lot of the actors do. He'd never worked on a monster movie before, but he liked the movie Monsters that Edwards directed, and it's sort of like, if it's the same guy doing it, sure, I'll do this. So yeah, so that's how he ends up working on this. Yeah, so some general production things that are interesting early on, and this is before Edwards comes on. You know, like I said, they were always going to have Godzilla fight monsters. Before the MUTOs were conceived, they were originally kind of going to have monsters that were more direct riffs on Toho monsters. So the first monster was a pterodactyl. I think just by that name, you can probably guess what that's based on. It was going to be kind of a mutated, edgy Rodan.
Yeah, but you can still kind of see the vibe, you know?
Yeah.
Of what we end up with.
Right. It definitely, you can see the direct line from that to the MUTO. Yeah. The other one is a rock MUTO.
Yeah. My heart.
We almost got
6 legs.
We almost got a 6-legged Anguirus, basically.
Oh, I love him.
Yeah.
I love him so much. What happened to his little horns? Buddy, what happened?
Yeah.
Oh,
cool
wow.
Design. Yeah.
This is now 2 Anguirises that I didn't get that I want.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, well, you can blame Gareth Edwards, and I think Max Borstein too. Like, are both credited for kind of coming up with the MUTOs. So you can blame them for shooting these down. We'll talk about the MUTOs later, but
sure.
Yeah, they veer away. I wouldn't be surprised if I know that this movie, to its credit, isn't very cinematic universe-y. It doesn't feel like it's setting up a lot of stuff for cinematic universe, but I'm sure they were still thinking about the future of like, maybe we should save actual Toho monsters for later in case we decide to use them,
Knowing that it spawns a cinematic universe, watching this, knowing that, I think you can kind of see some of that restraint being applied to that sort of knowledge.
Yeah.
That sort of forethought,
Let's make sure this works first. And then now we've got, and if it does, we've got
but
all
have plenty
of that
to build on.
Right. Exactly. We got all in the bag. Right. Yeah. A few other things when they were developing it. For the nuclear meltdown at the beginning, that's like the kind of inciting incident for the movie. That was modeled after a real life meltdown of Japan's Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant in 2011. And other disaster elements were modeled after the 2004 Indian tsunami and Hurricane Katrina.
Sure.
So they were pulling on all of those things inspired by that, and especially I think sort of the responses to those disasters as well, and what that sort of looked like when they were building this movie. And I think that another thing that I wanted to talk about briefly as well is like the military's relationship with this movie.
Sure.
So, because that's always going to be a thing with Godzilla movies, is that there very often are going to be military people fighting Godzilla, and movies may or may not make a statement on it. And, Japan talking about the Japanese military is obviously going to be different than America talking about the American military, just because our relationships with our own militaries are different. And I think this movie, is... they cooperated with the U.S. Navy. They cooperated with, the U.S. Army.
To imagine.
Yeah. So the Navy, the Navy offered up like 3 different aircraft carriers they could film on substantially, including the USS Ronald Reagan, which sucks and is gross. But the U.S. Army had technical advisors working on it, and that is a common thing in Hollywood movies where you have actual military people consulting on them. And on one hand, it makes a ton of sense that it's sort of like, if you want to try to make things authentic, you talk to people who are in it and try to make it look authentic. But I think what has been an interesting conversation over the last few years, especially, is sort of like exactly how much influence then the military will have on the movies. Because oftentimes it'll be like, we will offer to give you these jets to use in your movie as props, but only if you respond to our notes.
It's like military product placement. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to get product placement if you're trashing the product. Like it doesn't make sense in that if you think of it that way, Yeah.
So there's a 2022 article in The Guardian that I think is actually really interesting. That's kind of a deep dive into this. I'm just going to read some quotes from it because I think it's a really good article about this how it's affected Hollywood for a long time. It says, according to one estimate, the DoD has collaborated on 2,500 movies over the decades. Its involvement is not quite as transparent as claimed. In his 2004 book, Operation Hollywood, the journalist David Robb detailed how the Pentagon has been telling filmmakers what to say and what not to say for decades, listed examples from as early as Tomorrow Never Dies to Star Trek IV to Lassie. And in 2012, British journalist Thomas Secker began filing Freedom of Information requests for DoD Hollywood Communications.
Yeah.
He'd amassed tens of thousands of pages of documentation, including annotated drafts and film scripts that back up these claims. And he says that, I quote, they might claim they're relatively open about this, but they're not. They're open it as much as they have an involvement in Hollywood, but they've never, ever voluntarily published a set of their own script notes, and they've done everything they can to try to cover them up. And that article goes on to list a lot of examples of changes that the military forced movies to make in order to continue cooperating with them. And like, you could argue like, okay, well then just like, don't take the funding from them or whatever. But I do think you have to consider that it's like, sometimes these movies can only like exist with that cooperation or with that funding, right? Because they are working with others. Like the filmmakers might be working with other studios. They're sort of like, we're not going to pay you this money to do this. You're going to have to get it to the military, or your movie's not getting made, or you're getting fired, you know?
Barf.
For this movie, this article specifically cites this movie. It says that one of the notes for Godzilla 2014 was that a, quote, Japanese character's reference to his grandfather surviving Hiroshima was excised, with the Pentagon statement saying, if this is an apology or questioning of the decision to bomb Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that will be a showstopper for us. So that's what that article says. My question is that there is, you know, Dr. Serizawa in this movie does make a reference to his grandfather's in Hiroshima, right? So either this article is incorrect, which I don't think it is because it's well researched, or maybe there is a more expansive conversation around that. Because when you watch the movie, one thing that I think is interesting is that is brought up. That character brings up Hiroshima. He doesn't say that his grandfather survived or died in it necessarily. I think he says his grandfather was taken from him, or no, father. He says his father was taken from him by Hiroshima.
The other person says Hiroshima. He just gives a date, and
That's
the other
true.
person fills in the blank.
You're right. But then they don't comment on it. Serizawa doesn't really do anything else in the movie after that.
Okay.
It doesn't really go anywhere, and it's like ambiguous about like exactly what Hiroshima actually really did.
Well,
like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, one of my biggest, and there's more to say about it, but one of my biggest qualms with this movie is that I don't think it's really saying all that much. And I think it's because of that character, who is a direct reference or a direct adaptation of a character that has lots to say, you know? So
I have to imagine that he said more, or like, like, you know, like I said, this article says that it was about his grandfather surviving Hiroshima. In the movie, it's my father, which the age thing then suddenly doesn't really make a lot of sense. But my father, I think he says, was taken from me, but it doesn't mean that he died. He could have died in Hiroshima. He could have like died from radiation poisoning afterwards.
Yeah.
He could have just been really depressed and like distant to him. Like none of that is clear in the movie. It doesn't get clarified. And I do think like when you watch it, like when you don't know about Godzilla's origins, the original 1954 Godzilla's origins, the creation of it being tied to Hiroshima, it kind of feels out of nowhere in this movie. Like I think that the whole, you know, it's kind of like,
I think this
we want
movie...
to have some character say that maybe you shouldn't use nuclear weapons against Godzilla, but it's like only like half stated, and then like not. That thread is not continued after that one half statement that he kind of sort of makes a little bit.
Yeah, because this movie specifically separates itself from nuclear weapons or testing being the cause of Godzilla, and instead says that they were lying about what those tests were because they were trying to use them to stop Godzilla. And then when it is questioned later in the movie, it is for the safety of people, not any sort of like moral dilemma over the use of those weapons, generally speaking, as informed by previous uses of those weapons. Like they basically water down, if not completely erase, that question from the movie.
Yeah. And you know, I don't mean to like just jump right in the deep end with this stuff, but it's like I do think that context of the US military being involved essentially in the writing process of the movie, I think you do have to, I think that needs
cause
to be
and effect. I think it's right there.
I think that needs to be taken into account with the production stuff, because that is inevitably going to affect what it's doing, especially with Godzilla as a franchise being like a deeply political franchise tied to nuclear weapons, tied to war, tied to politics. The second that a military organization becomes involved in the writing of a movie that in a franchise that was pretty blatantly anti-war, like obviously that's going to cause some conflict. And I do think you have to kind of you really have to acknowledge that with this movie and approach it knowing that, like, whether that means just sort of like recognizing it and then just taking it for what it is or criticizing it for it, either way. I think you do have to acknowledge that, you know? Yeah. I also want to point out there's an article on the Army's own website about this movie and how the military, how the army was involved in it,
Sure.
like proudly being like,
Publicity,
isn't
baby.
it was just publicity. Like, isn't it cool that we did this? But even in that article, which is mostly just like a fluff piece or whatever, but then the article is a whole side tangent about how, like, we've seen that movies that critique the military, like movies that are criticizing us being in Iraq, are actually tend to not do so well. So really, we're helping movies do better by providing them feedback to make us look better. Like, it's such a fucking circle jerk.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised, but it's just like
No.
funny. Not funny, but you know what I mean. It's just sort of like
not
a fucking
funny,
course.
haha, but
Yeah.
It smells funny. You know what I mean? That kind of funny. I think it's important to bring it up. I think it's irresponsible not to bring it up. I think it's irresponsible not to consider it. And I think watching this movie and just how prevalent the military is, it is not just one player. It is the major player.
Yeah.
I think to not consider that would be to ignore a pretty big chunk of the movie.
Yeah. I mean, I think if I have a massive, my most massive issue with this movie is that I think the perspective it chooses, in my opinion, it was like the least interesting perspective to choose to focus on the most in this whole movie. And that is your military guy, and you're following him just accidentally stumbling into being the most important military guy who ever militaried in the whole world of the military.
Yeah.
And I think that really drags this movie down, to be honest.
Agreed.
But yeah. Anyway, let's talk about Godzilla for a little bit.
Let's do it.
Yes. So this Godzilla, he is portrayed by TJ Storm in motion capture.
Get that credit, baby.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't. He's uncredited in
God
the movie.
damn it. I'm glad everybody talks about him though, because I did see that name.
He is credited in the movies after this, so they learned their lesson.
Good.
But I think I remember saying for like Kurt Carley in the '98 movie, I'm like, they probably wouldn't do that today. I think they would credit him, and they literally don't. TJ Storm.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Man, that sucks.
Yeah, but he gets his due in future movies, so it's fine.
Good.
He's mostly a stunt performer and martial artist. He's done some smaller in-person acting roles, but like mostly like a ton of motion capture across like TV, movies, and video games. Mm-hmm. This is just some funny things. So in television, he was a main character on the 90s syndicated Conan the Barbarian show called Conan the Adventurer. I've never heard of it. I think it was part of like the Xena Hercules syndicated moom. But also, I don't know if you remember, Doug, on VR Troopers, this recurring villain. But he was the recurring villain Doom Master. See if you recognize him. Because I recognized him the second I saw him.
Yes, I do recognize him.
That's Godzilla, baby.
Wow, how far he's come.
If you're not familiar with this dude, just Google TJ Storm Doom Master VR Troopers, and you will find some fun pictures of him. It's like
incredible.
It's like an 80s tokusatsu villain costume that they're putting on him. But like the American version, so like much lower budget than what they had at the time. So it's a very silly costume. It looks great. I'm sure he was having a great time in it. But it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah.
He had a minor role in Kamen Rider Dragon Knight as well. So like he has a lot of tokusatsu cred actually.
Okay.
In America. But he's appeared in anything from soap operas to Critical Role. Yeah, I know. He's done mocap and voice acting in like Devil May Cry and Resident Evil video game series. So he's done a bunch of stuff. Before this movie, he'd done mocap in things like Avatar, Green Lantern, and Tron Legacy. So he wasn't a nobody. After this movie, he does even more. He's Iron Man in Civil War. He's Colossus in Deadpool. He's Predator in the 2018 Predator movie. Like, he is a go-to motion capture guy now. He already was, but like even more so, I think, after this movie.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So he never met like any of the actors or Gareth Edwards at all. I think all of the motion capture stuff was done after they sort of wrapped principal filming. It was really action choreographer Garrett Warren just called him, because they were asking for motion capture performances to do these beast performances. It was Warren and two other actors who I'll talk about in a second, who did it. Storm had to wear a suit with dots, obviously, if you know motion capture, you're familiar with that. But he also wore a tail made out of foam well, so he could learn how to use the tail, which was really cool.
Yeah.
So
makes sense.
Yeah. So again, didn't get to interact with any of like the, the other, human actors, but like they got to be their own little, kaiju bubble doing this fun kaiju stuff.
Well, here's a question for you. I mean, How much do the traditional suit actors in older Godzilla movies interact with the human actors in those stories?
You know, that's kind of, well, I think the difference is that they are still filming them at the same time. So even if, like, you know, because usually you'll have your special effects director and your, you know, movie director doing it. So even if they're not interacting on set acting together, like, they're gonna be around.
They could,
you know
find
what I
each
mean?
other.
Like, you have plenty of pictures of actors hanging out with the Godzilla suit, like, all the time.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, there's actual options. This one, like, they literally wrapped and moved on to other stuff by the time they got to actually doing the Godzilla stuff. But it also meant that, like, they had no idea what any of these kaiju would look like, which, again, like, I know that that's not uncommon for big special effects things, but it is wild to me that they filmed the entire movie never knowing the kaiju that they're working with at all. You know what I mean? Like, the entire movie seems pretty wild to me.
It's wild to imagine from the perspective of an actor who might, like, be interested in what the film is. That's true. Like, nothing they're doing is reliant on what the monsters look like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not like anybody is like, wow, I can't believe the joints on that motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like, it walks so funny. So
That's true. Andy Serkis, you know, obviously we know Andy Serkis. I think at this point he had done Lord of the Rings, but I think also he had done motion capture for King Kong in the 2005 King Kong. So, like, having done a you know, a big kaiju before, they brought him to do some consultation with these actors to help them along with him, his experience.
Well, and he'd also, the Rise of the Planet of the Apes stuff had already started, and that drew plenty of attention for
I didn't realize that it already, you're right, that had already started. Yeah. When were those movies? Were they like 2011 or something?
The first one was 2011, I think. Yeah, I think you nailed it.
I didn't realize how long that, like, rebooted franchise has been around.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
That's so funny. Yeah. And Storm apparently based the movements on lizards like the Komodo dragon, bears, lions, and wolves.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. The name for this Godzilla design is the Garagoji, for Gareth Edwards, of course.
Oh.
It was at this time the largest Godzilla ever. It was like it's technically 355 feet tall. Largest Godzilla ever. It's only going to get bigger from here.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and I think there's some interesting stuff with the design of it. Edwards said that they were trying to imagine Godzilla as a real creature that in 1954, someone from Toho saw him, ran back to the studio to make a movie about it, trying the best to remember it and draw it. And then in our film, you're getting to see him for real. Does that make sense? Like,
yes, I do.
The suit Godzilla was
a
depiction of a real creature.
Godzilla.
And so this Godzilla was the real creature that they were depicting in the 1950s.
No, that makes perfect sense to me. It's sort of like I don't know, like, if you think of, like, the way that medieval creatures are drawn, it's sort of like, sure, okay, whatever.
Cat faces,
you saw a thing and interpreted it as a dragon, like, or cat faces. Yeah.
This Godzilla was primarily designed by What a Workshop. They'd done most of the creature stuff for the 2005 King Kong movie, so another connection to that. And Andrew Baker, are the artist who has the most creative influence on this design. Toho was also heavily involved with the design process. Early designs, obviously based on dinosaurs, and I think however much it looked like a dinosaur or not like a dinosaur, just went very back and forth. Sometimes, you know, he's hunched over. I think they also were conscious of the TriStar or the 1998 Godzilla, and trying to make sure it's like, you know, well, this one was hunched over, maybe ours shouldn't be hunched over, you know, kind of going back and forth on how close or far away it should be. Like, oh, we're looking at iguanas. Well, maybe we shouldn't look at iguanas because that movie looked at iguanas, you know. Dorsal plates were apparently a whole conversation, because they actually had a lot of different, like, design ideas where it's like triangular with electrical atomic breath. At certain points they were like fish fins. At one point it was like porcupine spikes. But it was always sort of like, I actually thought this was sort of interesting. A lot of that ended up being tied into, like, whether or not they were committing to having atomic breath, because they weren't exactly sure, like, does he need to have atomic breath or not? And that affects the dorsal fins, because if you're going to have atomic breath, you're going to want to have the lit up dorsal fins. Right. So how the dorsal fins would still need to look good enough to also light up in some way. So once they decide, yes, we're definitely doing atomic breath, then they decide on more of the triangular things. I think they were going for like an angular broken slate look. Edwards stated his reasoning behind the kind of broken slate was that it's as if the fins are growing out of Godzilla are brittle and they can break.
Yeah.
Then they kind of continue to shift into more like maple leaf designs from there that are similar to the traditional Godzilla design. So they end up kind of circling back to the original one, but I think going through that process helps these dorsal fins still look kind of distinct from what you've been seeing from other designs by that point.
That's not a weird artistic process to go through, especially when you're doing adaptations. Like, sometimes you have to get far away to realize that it's better to stay close, you know?
Yeah.
Plus, then you bring in all those other ideas, like you're saying, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. The face was also obviously a conversation. I think they were specifically aiming towards a more angular face because they didn't want to have a round face because they felt like a round face would look too cute, essentially. I think this Godzilla is still kind of cute sometimes, but like not intentionally, right? So I kind of understand. I understand that. So they're kind of thinking of like, I think they were thinking of a grizzly bear at one point because the grizzly bear's skull is really angular, but the eyes were a problem for them. And then I think where they ended up figuring out the eyes was Edwards watching the Dark Crystal, realizing that the Skeksis, like, which are like kind of vulture-like from there, you know, like they have really distinct looking eyes that he felt were really striking. So he's like, okay, well, if we're going to have kind of like a bear type face, what if it was like a mammal head with birds of prey or vulture like eyes? Yeah. And that's, I think, how we get these like little tiny itty bitty angry eyes that Godzilla has.
Look, I love the big sort of like cat-like anime eyes. I've grown to very much appreciate them, especially as I've seen more iterations of them. This is the first time we get to talk about Monsterverse eyes. I love them. I love his little tiny eyes. There's something about it that I think like just really like I don't know, works. Like there's something like weirdly cute about it, even though they're specifically trying not to do that. You know what I mean?
That's, yeah, I agree with you. Like he's still kind of cute. I think it makes him look like an angry old man. Yeah. In a way that's kind of endearing.
But you know? There is yes, absolutely. There is a moment though, like when you first see his face where he kind of like does a smile and it's like kind of a menacing, scary, like I'm like murderous looking smile. So I don't know. There's many different faces of this Godzilla, depending on, you know, it's surprisingly emotive, and depending on what angle you're looking at it from, you get all kinds of different sort of views and different tones and different expressions. They
do a good job with the facial expression. I mean, there's like, you know, it's towards the end. I think very intentionally so, like when Godzilla is very close to the ground. So like, and I think it's really the first time you see his face from a real human perspective, because like Ford is looking right at him. Yeah. And like, there's so much emotion on the face of Godzilla when he's like tired and weary and everything. And I'm like, yeah, of course people would fall in love with this guy. He's fucking adorable. He looks so sweet, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think he looks cool. I like the head shape. And it's, you know, I know the head shape probably feels to a lot of folks like very, very different than a traditional Godzilla head, but like, I don't think it's that different than some of the ones we've seen that have a more like a shorter snout. You know what I mean? Because there are ones that have a shorter, sort of more compact snout, and have a little bit more of a cat-like profile. And this one kind of has like that cat-like, bear-like profile.
Yeah, well, and I think that's part of it too. So that's the other thing about this Godzilla is that he's a big old boy. Big guy. Big guy. And I think that was also just because they were looking at bears. If they're thinking of like a big, giant, lumbering, imposing creature, like, you know, why not also be wide too, you know? And they lean into that. It's to the point, this is so fucking funny to me. I didn't know this. So like they unveiled this design in 2012 at Comic-Con. And that was the initial design, but they end up having to still tweak the design at the last minute after they unveil it, because they unveiled that model, but then once they start using that model in more action sequences as they're finalizing it, they realize that like the legs were simply too thick to be able to like to actually animate it well without things just fucking like clipping into each other. So they had to like slim down his thighs.
That's
they made
so
him
funny.
They made him too fucking thick. They made it like it's so good.
Which is wild because he's still thick as like this is a like big chunk of a Godzilla, which I love. I love
how chunky he
big
is.
Godzilla, like in scale and in wideness.
It's so fun. It is so fun. Yeah, I love it so much. Yeah, I think it's a really fun design. A few other random things. They gave him gills. I just think that's funny. Like, it's like, sure, he swims. He's aquatic.
You know what? I didn't even think about that, even though okay, I play Fortnite, Godzilla's in Fortnite, and it's really obvious that he has gills in that. But anyway, I remember like looking at it and being like, wow, his gills are really prominent, but not like connecting the fact that this was the same one. So I like wasn't even thinking about it when I was watching this one. I don't think they're as obvious in this, obviously, as they are in like pink lighting up Fortnite Godzilla.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even realize. I didn't think about that
funny.
The whole time I was watching this, but it makes sense.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Also, his roar, it was revamped. Obviously, it's not the same one. It's still based on the original roar that they had. The sound team, this is just what I was reading in behind the scenes things. They were using microphones that could record sound inaudible to humans, found sounds to match the shriek and the finishing bellow. The new roar retains the musical key and cadence of the roar, but goes from a C to a D, which would be lower. And then they spent 6 months getting the roar right. Final version was the 50th they produced.
Sick. Sure. I like it. There's a moment in this movie where it goes on so much longer than you expect it to, which ends up being like really effective in how horrifying it is. So the fact that it goes on longer than you expect and I enjoyed it, I think is a good sign.
Yeah. It's fun. It's good sound. Anything else to say about this absolute unit, Godzilla?
I don't think so. I guess, you got to talk about Godzilla's feet, right? He kind of has weird feet. I don't know that they like quite got the feet right on this first go. He kind of has like elephant feet when you see them. There's surprisingly little foot there.
No, actually, you know what? That's a good point. It is very like tree trunk ankles.
Yeah. Which I think changes.
He has cankles. Yeah, he kind of has cankles. Yeah, I think it does. The design definitely changes between this and the next movie he appears in.
It gets smaller.
Well,
I don't know if it gets smaller right away, but I know
not right away. He does eventually get smaller, which is a bummer. But I know that they do tweak it though. Which,
I mean, honestly, I'm not surprised. Like any series that you're gonna sell merchandise and toys and has special effects, like it's not that weird.
Yeah, and they need him to like jump around and do flips and shit. So he can't really do that if he's too thick, right? Yeah. So the MUTOs are the other kaiju in this movie. Massive unidentified terrestrial organisms.
The moment they said that in the movie, the MUTOs or whatever, I was like, that's right. I remember this so distinctly. Like it all sort of came back to me the moment they said that. I don't know what about the name of those monsters was like the key to unlocking my memory. But I was like, I remember these guys.
Yeah. They are portrayed by Matt Cross and Lee Ross. I don't really know anything about them, to be honest. They're not on the level of TJ Storm. But they did get to do some cool shit. So the actor for the male MUTO wore a set of wings that he operated by his arms when he did the motion capture. And then the female MUTO's actor wore 2 prosthetic additional legs and used crutches to act.
Yes, I was wondering about this because the way that the female MUTO moves is very much like drag performers and drag monsters who do insects.
Yeah. I just sent you a behind the scenes photo of all 3 of them together. Okay, it's so fun. They look like they're having a great time.
Yeah. Oh, actually, that's not even as extreme as I expected with the prosthetics and crutches.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I had a feeling there was probably something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're so funny. Their expressions to each other.
They're really funny. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. So for the design, they were looking at creatures from they were looking at like basically every like creature feature that was like a very, very well-known high budget one, right? Like Jurassic Park, Aliens, Star Trek Troopers, King Kong, all that stuff has oftentimes insectoidy kind of things that they could pull from it. Concept artist Matt Alsop is the one who's credited with doing most of the design work on this one. I think originally they were thinking crab is where they're going towards. I think that's how you end up eventually getting to like kind of insectoid. The original design had a face that was mostly kind of featureless and almost completely eyeless. It was kind of over time that I think they realized that they really needed an articulated mouth and more definite eyes, just so like they could get better close-ups of them. You could get some emotion out of them. Like, I mean, this whole fucking movie ends up being about like how these two creatures just want to kiss. Like, you know, so I do think there's a little bit of like empathy you can have for them. And that kind of comes, and part of that can come from them having somewhat more defined faces. It's obviously not as defined as Godzilla's face is.
Yeah.
But it is still there. And I think that is an important part of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, Godzilla is the one that is going to be familiar, so you can lean into some of that familiarity. But these ones, I think, are meant to be very alien, you know, like alien from the bottom of the sea or whatever, you know?
Yeah. I mean, speaking of alien, like at one point, the wings were shaped more like X-Wings from Star Wars, apparently.
I
they
can see that.
Yeah. And they almost, I think at one point, like the male was a lot more like dragon-like a little bit in the way that his limbs were. And I think the reason they scale those back are specifically to like keep it away from dragons. So it's even more kind of alien. Because it is kind of hard to like I think the insectoid thing is because there's like egg sacs and shit like that. And like the kind of a spidery way that they approach things, but they're not really insectoids. Like they aren't really anything. They are.
No, they have like
alien.
skin and clearly have like endoskeletons. Like they're not like armored insect like creatures.
Yeah. I mean, that's, you know, I think that I think that the inspirations make a lot of sense. I think that they're cool looking.
I think they are cool looking. I think this is one of the, I think the MUTOs are like, I think a good example of what I mean when I say like some of the restraint is with regards to realizing that like we shouldn't do too much in the first one. Like they do plenty in the first one, but like these monsters, they look cool, but they're not necessarily like spectacular focal points of the movie. They are a bit featureless, even though they added features to them.
I agree. Yeah,
you know?
I mean, they're not anywhere in the realm of like Toho kaiju. Like they're not.
No, they're not mascot like material.
Right. They're not. Yeah, like they are meant to be. They feel very in line with like your Cloverfields and like your it's a very Cloverfield especially.
Yeah.
But like any creature feature from the 2000s where it's like a CGI monster, whether it's a good one or not, I feel like they kind of feel along the lines of what were being made in this time, which isn't to say that they're like not imaginative. It's just like the route they were going down was more like what you would expect from a space alien rather than a Japanese kaiju.
And again, I think the fact that Godzilla's familiar and these are supposed to be unfamiliar or like more alien, I think works. It makes sense that you would make something like that. I think it makes sense that you kind of have this like monster design rooted in decades of tradition and then a monster that feels extremely of the time, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you know, they kept the monsters simple. In terms of like motivations and what they're doing and what they look like, really, because this is meant to be focused on this being the new Godzilla movie rather than it being something that was introducing creative new kaiju. You know, so I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the characters.
Okay.
Oh boy.
Uh-huh.
So you didn't remember that Aaron Taylor Johnson, our favorite guy, is in this movie, did you?
How could I possibly have remembered that he was in this movie? He is like the most average guy ever in this movie. I know that the movie is like, this is a superhero among men. But he is Christ. Like, he is truly like just the most featureless man ever. Like, and I don't even say that just like inherently, like they styled him to be like the most featureless man ever. Like in Craven, they style him like he looks away. You know what I mean? In this, like, you know, how would I have remembered this man? He's completely unmemorable in this role. Also, so mad that like he is one of my most watched actors of January. I'm like mad about that. It's so stupid. Because he's in Nosferatu, he's in like I just
yeah, it's weird that he keeps getting cast and stuff. I don't understand.
I don't get it.
Here's the thing. I mean, Doug did a very good podcast with Gavin and Tyler over on our Patreon about Kraven the Hunter. So they had plenty to say about Aaron Taylor Johnson. I'm on the same route. I don't really care for the guy. I don't think he's very good in much anything. I liked him in Kick-Ass. I think that he is good in those movies. Sure. And at this point, when this movie is coming out, that kind of is that was his mainstream Hollywood breakout, was the Kick-Ass movie. He had been acting since he was a kid. I think his actual breakout technically, I think, was in Nowhere Boy, because he played a young Lennon in that biopic. I've never seen it. I don't know. Maybe I could see it being a thing where maybe he was good as a child actor. Because again, I do think that he is good in the Kick-Ass movies when he's much younger. I think that once
doesn't
he ends
always
up,
translate to adulthood.
right, it doesn't translate to adulthood. And I do think, in his defense, I think as soon as he transitioned to adulthood, he was quickly just put into these roles where he's not really given anything. He's not given an interesting character. So if he is not good at like generating an interesting character from uninteresting material, which some actors are very good at, they can give you everything from nothing. I would argue many actors in this movie do that. But if he's not good at doing that, he's not going to be able to. And I think this is kind of an instance like that. Like, I don't think he is actively bad in this movie. I think he's just kind of given kind of a blank slate character, and then makes the most obvious choices every step of the way, and therefore ends up being a nothing performance.
But I think you just described my feelings on Aaron Taylor Johnson. I know some people really like actively dislike Aaron Taylor Johnson. I just think Aaron Taylor Johnson is like a perfectly serviceable, functional actor. Like, he is uninspired and uninspiring. Like you said, doesn't make any interesting choices, makes all the most obvious choices. Like, he's not disastrous. He's just not, he's not giving, you know?
Yeah, he's an actor who is very forgettable, but which many actors are in Hollywood, especially, you know, this type of just like young, hot, white, straight guy kind of actor.
Yeah.
But the problem is that a lot of those then end up just like disappearing. It's just weird that he keeps getting massive roles and massive projects. Like, does he just like hypnotize people with his giant blue eyes? I don't understand.
I think that's part of it. I would like to see Aaron Taylor Johnson get to be a freak, because like
I agree with you.
I don't particularly like him in Nosferatu, but some people really do. And I get why, because he gets to be like this sort of dramatic, melodramatic guy. I don't know, I don't know if that's the movie where he should be over the top, but I think he could be a freak, and I would like to see him try, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Apparently Joseph Gordon-Levitt was offered this role, but he declined. It would have been a much better choice.
I think that would have been infinitely better.
Yeah, I think it actually would have really. I think he would have actually given an interesting performance in this.
I think so.
But once Taylor Johnson got cast again, I think he got cast off of Kick-Ass. What?
So I'm just sorry. I just am like thinking about Joseph Gordon-Levitt in this role, and like
especially in this era, because this is in the Inception era for him, Inception and Dark Knight Rises era, where I do think he's like trying to do weird things within these otherwise potentially normal roles, you know.
And I think that Joseph Gordon-Levitt does internal pain well, and I feel like that's a thing that Aaron Taylor Johnson never gives in this.
Oh my God.
Like, he is a hurting man, but he doesn't depict that at all.
He seems perfectly fine that everyone around him has died.
Right. And I just can't imagine Joseph Gordon-Levitt would give that. Like, he would be, it'd be all over his face, you know?
Oh, well, speaking of, though, Aaron Taylor Johnson did say in an interview that of this movie, I've probably been more emotionally challenged in this film than any independent drama or thriller.
Gobsmacked.
Give us nothing, King.
Truly.
I love when he's like, his father has just died, and he's just like, just standing there kind of dead-eyed over his dead body.
It really is giving, it's giving like toxic stoicism. You know what I mean?
That's
sort of like,
I think that what he locked onto of this character is that like, oh, I am a soldier. Soldiers are strong and have seen horrible things there and have to be stoic in the face of them.
And they compartmentalize it.
And they compartmentalize.
But buddy, you're the star of the movie. You need to give something.
But he also doesn't give like shell shock either. He just gives like, doesn't really care what's happening. Because it's sort of like, because in that scene after his dad has died, like it's incorrect for me to say that he's dead-eyed. That's not true. I can tell that he as an actor is trying to do something. He's trying to be like, I have a lot of emotions that are internally there, but like, I don't think he knows how to portray that. Yeah. So he just sort of stands there and stares wide-eyed at his dad's dead body.
I think a lot of actors can do a lot with only their eyes, right? But I think one thing that's interesting about Aaron Taylor Johnson is that remarkably, he does nothing with the lower half of his face. And normally, if you have big baby blues that are giving, it doesn't really matter what the bottom half of your face is doing. But he just has like this just stone lower half of his face that's doing nothing. You know, I don't know. It's really bizarre. Yeah. Honestly, what's weird is like, I just said I think he would do well as like a freak, but I think the best he is in this movie is maybe when he is looking over that kid. Like he's kind of endearing in the moments where he's with that kid.
With like the Japanese kid, or I think he assumes that he's Japanese because he speaks Japanese to them. I don't know if he actually is, but I mean, that kid.
It's not very long, so it's like you don't get a lot of it. But
it's just so funny you say that because I did not agree with that. I think I do not buy.
I mean, where is he more compelling?
I don't think he's more compelling anywhere. Is the thing. I think my
equally
feeling in
uncompelling.
That scene, my feeling with the scene with the kid. So yeah, there's the kid in a train at one point who's separated from his parents and he's looking after this kid, and then obviously has to deal with that while monsters attack. Obviously, I don't buy that he's a father. He doesn't feel like a dad.
Well,
to me,
that is the
to
problem,
anyone,
right? Like
but that means that when that kid enters the picture, and it's supposed to be like, this is a man who is a father, obviously is going to inherently be gravitated towards protecting a child. It seems he's playing it like any movie where any action hero is reluctantly having to protect a kid and when they don't like kids. He's like Indiana Jones having to protect a kid when he doesn't want to. Like, that's how he's playing it with them. Like, you literally have a kid the same age at home that's supposed to be like a major emotional point for you and through line that you're trying to get back to your kid, who you barely see him interact with really at all. And I don't see that. He's not playing it like he has a kid at all.
I agree with that. I think that he is endearing in the way that in Indiana Jones taking care of a kid reluctantly would be. I don't know that it is entirely Aaron Taylor Johnson's fault that doesn't work given his parentage. I think that this movie often doesn't have very much to say, and that is an opportunity where it would have something to say about him and his circumstances and being away and his relationship with his own father. And I don't know that Aaron Taylor Johnson alone, especially given, how much he's giving or how little, is able to make up for what isn't there. I don't think the movie writes a scenario for that parallel.
Yeah. No, I don't think so. I mean, all the stuff with the kid on the train, I think, kind of annoys me because I don't quite.
It doesn't have to be there.
Well, my thing is that I don't mind that scene in a vacuum because it gives more stakes to that character. Maybe this is a conversation to have a little bit later once we've gotten to a point. But like, I have an issue with like, if they want to have a story about him being separated from his family, there's so much more they could have played with that. And the stuff with him and the kid on the train makes me feel like maybe this movie would have been better if his family was just with him the entire time. And all the stakes that you have here was him trying to protect his family while also doing the military shit the entire time. So you have those stakes rather than him just being this lone figure while his family is back home doing absolutely fuck all. We'll talk about Elizabeth Olsen. That would have added those stakes because it feels like they want to add a complication like that with the little kid on the train. And I'm like, that could have just been his fucking son. Like, you know what I mean?
It could have been his son. I think you'll disagree with me on half of this, but like, I agree with you. A more interesting thing would be to have his family with him. I also think it would have benefited the movie for him just not to have the family. Like, I think where we end up is a weird middle ground.
Maybe
ends up being kind of the worst of those three options.
Interesting either way. I agree with you because I think the family stuff is absolutely wasted. In this movie,
it would free him up a little bit.
Let's pause. I'm sure we'll have. I mean, there's other scenes that he's in, like every scene of the fucking movie. So we'll have more to say about Aaron Taylor Johnson. We'll pause on ragging on Aaron Taylor Johnson.
We'll ever say about Aaron Taylor Johnson
for a little bit. We will pause that for a little bit. I think I'm thinking of more things to say about him later. So
of course.
I'll talk about Elizabeth Olsen real quick. First of all, very funny that the year after this, they play brother and sister after playing husband and wife.
Yeah, I had to look that up.
It's not their fault.
It's not their fault.
It's very, very funny.
Right. I had to look it up because I was like, it doesn't actually matter because it's not their fault and none of these relationships between them are real. But I was like, please let this have happened before Age of Ultron, and I think it is the year before.
No, it's the year before. Yeah.
But I don't know why that makes it better, but seeing them play siblings after this felt better than seeing them play this after being siblings.
Yeah, I guess so. But also it's sort of like, I mean, they're actors. It's all fake. They can do whatever they want.
Right.
But I think it's more the timing of it and the fact that these movies are in the same zone. They're like big budget action movie blockbusters with a lot of CGI. They're going to have the same audiences seeing those people who go to a Marvel movie, people who go to the Monsterverse movies.
Yeah.
Like very big overlap there, and it's literally within the same, like, 1 year after each other. That's what makes it funny and weird and hilarious.
And it is the fact that in Age of Ultron they are very much a pair. They are an isolated pair of siblings. It's different than if they just happen to be related in a movie. You know what I mean?
It's just It doesn't actually
ultimately matter. Yeah,
it has nothing to do with this movie. It's just very, very funny.
I 100% forgot Elizabeth Olsen was in this movie.
Well,
when she showed up, I was like, oh shit.
Why would you remember? So a couple of things about her casting. This is actually what kind of opens her up to doing like Scarlet Witch, because she had a career, but she was doing like indie movies the whole time. And apparently her agent told her specifically, like, hey, no one's offering you these higher profile quote unquote roles because they assume you're not interested because you either turn them down or like only take little indie roles. Yeah. So when she sees this opportunity, she's like, okay, I like this Gareth Edwards guy directed a good movie. So I'll do this movie because maybe it'll be an art house Hollywood movie. Gets in it, even though she does like fuck all in this movie, she gets to be Scarlet Witch the next year. So then she becomes a Hollywood actor. So that's how she ends up in this movie. Her story is that she's waiting for her husband the whole time. Yeah. You know what's so funny, Tug? Mm-hmm. I can't believe I'm about to say this. The 1998 Godzilla movie did better with its women characters than the 2014 Godzilla movie does. I agree. Because one female character in the 1998 movie did have a character arc. Also, how many women are in this movie and have character arcs?
That's the thing. The 1998 movie had 3 women I can name. This has 1. I know that she talks to one other person. That's right. There's like the military side or the monarch.
There's Sally Hawkins.
And there's the wife at the beginning.
And there's the wife at the beginning. There's the female MUTO who is only defined who is only defined by wanting to have babies. So,
Okay, you're right. But what they get to do or the personalities they have.
Does a single character, any of them have any sort of independent character arc? Are any of them defined by anything other than their relationship with a man? Even her friend, even Elizabeth Olsen's hospital friend, Laura, I think her name is. Even she is like defined by
taking care of all the children,
the boy, right? Like, there's not a single female character that isn't just defined by the men in their lives and that have an independent story arc.
I was going to say all defined by the man in their life and don't have an impact. You could technically remove pretty much all of them from the story and none of the plot changes because Aaron Taylor Johnson is in no way affected by the fact that he has a wife.
Right.
You know?
Right. That's the thing.
Like his dad is, but he's not, So even though it's not great that one of these characters dies at the very beginning and that's like our man's trauma, impact. She has an impact.
Yeah. It's like, and like what's frustrating too is that Elizabeth Olsen plays Elle Brody, which I always think is funny because it makes you think of Ellen Brody from the Jaws movies. Oh. But she's a nurse working in this disaster situation. Yeah. That automatically is an entry point into potential stories where she is intersecting with some other character that ends up in her hospital or has to deal with some complicated crisis that she has to have some sort of emotional arc with, or some, crisis of conscience or something with at her hospital. She could deal with that. There's like a potential storyline for that. Like,
they almost get there. She has a singular momentary interaction with somebody where she's like, where are you taking these patients? Because it's like horrifying that they have to move all these patients in this disaster scenario.
If this is a movie that is doing a lot of riffing on modern disaster response on the ground, which it does a lot of, part of that is how that affects hospitals. You have your entry point POV character in the hospital. Why don't you give her a story? Like, I think this is a thing that like they could have stood to try to emulate a Roland Emmerich type of movie that does like ensemble cast where you see different
Everyone
sort of
does
people,
something.
everyone having little independent stories in their sort of realm dealing with a disaster. Instead, they choose to really just focus on the military side and dabble slightly in a scientist side. And then like there's a whole medical thing that you could have a whole medical drama in this. And it would be fine. Like, I don't understand why they choose not to. Like, you even if she did nothing in the movie until she decides to stay at the hospital and let her son go on the escape bus. Even that could have been an opportunity to be like, now that she's staying at the hospital, she's like, you know, this sort of the last guard, the last defense against what's happening. In probably what's a skeleton crew in the hospital now, you can give her something interesting to do there. But no, she just ends up running to a shelter and then being underground in the dark for the whole rest of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, it's annoying. She really truly only like serves to give us other camera angles and perspectives. Like that's kind of what she is, you know? Like, and it's a bummer because obviously Elizabeth Olsen can act. And you're right. There's like a perfect opening several times for her to do something interesting and to say something.
Let me propose something to you.
Okay.
And obviously this wouldn't solve every problem. And I'm not saying that this is how you solve like women characters in movies across the board. But for this one specifically, what if you just swapped Elizabeth Olsen and Aaron Taylor Johnson in that Elizabeth Olsen is Elle Brody from the U.S. Navy, Bryan Cranston's daughter, and Aaron Taylor Johnson is a nurse at the hospital?
I'm just imagining Aaron Taylor Johnson's bedside manner, but
if nothing changed, he had as much to do, which was nothing. He is barely in the movie, really, and Elizabeth Olsen instead is the daughter.
Well,
playing this military person.
Here's the thing: if you truly just swap them and they do the same things,
they do the same
things. Inherently, there is something more interesting to say about a young mother of a child who is affected by the same exact circumstance that Aaron Taylor Johnson is, and who has the same stoic response. Like, that is inherently saying more just by swapping them. But I don't even think you necessarily would have to do that. I think you can just change who the protagonist is, and it still would be better. Like, if the protagonist of the movie is her instead of him in their exact same roles, I feel like, and maybe she is Cranston's daughter, but they still have the same roles, and you just focus more on disaster response and more on whatever.
That's true.
And the stakes are that he might die instead of, oh no, did she get crushed? Like, or automatically there's more interesting stuff. You have a better perspective and point of view. It's less about the military, and Elizabeth Olsen is a better actor.
Right. Like, I'm not saying that like in every scenario you should just like gender swap things and then that solves it. Now feminism is one.
No, this is specifically based on the story they're telling.
This specifically, I think, would bizarrely like solve like a lot of problems with this movie, and partially just because of how it was cast. But like, I think that would help this movie a lot.
Look, you can say things about like masculinity and how it affects grieving. This movie does not. You know what I mean?
God,
so
no.
you may as well have something to say about, a young woman, because they're no older than 25 in this movie. They are young. Like, they had a child young that is like a military baby. He's like 25 at the most.
Sure.
There would be something to say about her with his demeanor under these circumstances.
Let's get away from these like boring ass losers.
Sure.
We can go in many directions. Who are you anxious to talk about?
I want to talk about Bryan Cranston because I don't think we're going to talk about him for a long time, but we're not going to talk about him for a long time. I think he's like my favorite character in the movie, and I really was like bummed that he isn't the protagonist of this movie, because I think he's interesting. I wish he had survived longer, but that is my disappointment at Aaron Taylor Johnson's portrayal of grief more than it is the actual narrative of Bryan Cranston's character.
I think it's a really fun, cool move to kill him off as early as you do, because it is genuinely a misdirect, I think.
Protagonist shift, yep.
Right. I think that's a really fun protagonist shift. And I like the idea of the reluctant son who didn't really believe any of this stuff and never really reconciled with his dad, now having to shoulder all the weight of his dad's legacy and deal with grief at the same time that he's trying to live up to him and utilize the information that he has from his dad for the better, right? I like that as an idea, but you're right, as cast and honestly as scripted too, really, they don't really write towards that angle to benefit him dying when he does.
And the best protagonist shifts I can think of are all from like horror movies where like the unexpected member of the like group of teens or the obnoxious sidekick that you assume is going to die first becomes the protagonist. That's like interesting because then you've got like unexpected circumstances. They're put into a position they are not set up for or prepared for. Like that would be interesting. But
yeah,
Aaron Taylor Johnson is actually uniquely prepared for every single situation he ends up in. So what are we doing? You know, like what's the point of the perspective shift? He's actually more capable of handling the things in front of him than Bryan Cranston's character would have been.
Yeah. Like, oh, you guys need to disarm a bomb? Well, look at me. I'm a professional bomb disarmer. Like,
yeah. Good thing my dad is very, very specifically connected to the scenario and I disarm bombs.
Yeah, it sucks. I don't like that.
Yeah, but I like Bryan Cranston. He's amazing. Unsurprisingly, I do think he delivers one of the best performances. He doesn't have to be there for very long, so he can like give a concentrated performance. The moment the movie started and we got into that scenario, I was like, oh fuck, I remember what happens at the beginning of this movie. It's really rough. I remembered it darker, like literally darker than it is, because I think it is a dark way to start the movie, and I think it's effective. I think there's so much they could have done with it, and I guess they do what this movie set out to do with it, so I can't really fault him for it.
Yeah, he does do a lot of screaming in this movie. I do think this role is very benefited by it being Bryan Cranston. Not to say that the character is like bad or anything like that.
No,
right?
but it's not like a groundbreaking character.
Right. I think that this is, you know, like the Bechdel cast has that like long runner of the character who's like his wife, my wife. Like he's just the my wife guy, like driven just about being totally upset about his wife, you know?
Yeah.
And you know, I do think that really only works as well as it does because Bryan Cranston does make you feel the grief that he's carrying for it, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, good job getting
it
him
is a
for it.
very clear archetype that is not straying from the archetype at all. But yeah, you feel the grief from Bryan Cranston where you don't from literally anyone else. So, and it's a distinct shift. Like when you see him 10 years later, he is a very different guy.
Yeah, very different performance. Yeah. I think they do a good job with that. It's just funny. He had to wear a wig because he was still bald for Breaking Bad.
I was gonna say his hair's so bad at the start of the movie.
Yep,
it's really, really bad.
Yeah.
Why couldn't he just be bald? I guess because he was in Breaking Bad, but like he doesn't have his goatee. Why can't he just be bald? Whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. Anything else to say about Bryan Cranston?
No.
Speaking of his wife.
Yeah.
Just real quick, Juliette Binoche.
Yeah.
I just think it's very funny because she's a very, very renowned French actress who's won like a shit ton of awards and then gets to just show up for like 10 minutes and be like, all right, peace out, guys.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? Maybe she gives the best performance of the movie. Maybe that's actually where it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's great. She's just barely in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Speaking of barely in the movie, just to get it out of the way, Sally Hawkins plays Dr. Graham in this movie. I love her. Everyone knows her now for Paddington and Shape of Water, but even before this, she was long stage career, nominated and won a ton of awards for like a bunch of British films. Like she was a very well-known, very well-regarded, well-loved actor that they cast in a role to do nothing at all. Well, she was the last actor cast. Like they were already undergoing principal photography when they grabbed her for this. So maybe it was really just sort of like, hey, do you want a quick paycheck, Sally Hawkins? You don't have to do anything.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. I was gonna say it's like funny that you say she's barely in this because she's like kind of all over the screen, but she's just like not in the story, which makes it actually like more egregious because you're sort of like she's right there. She's here the whole time.
She's literally just like an assistant. And I think
she's giving face is what she's doing.
She has you can tell that she's a good actor because she reacts to everything really well. It's hard to not notice her, but then it makes you notice her and realize that she's not saying or doing anything other than reacting, which is not her fault. She's doing.
No.
She's got a banger performance with the 6 words that she says in the movie.
Yeah, she's like such a classic example of like somebody who's like eating up the minutes that they're given, you know, sort of like, I'm gonna make my moment count.
Yeah.
Or like the person who's like in every scene in the background who's sort of like, well, if I don't get lines, I'm gonna give them emotion. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
But like, she's good at it. It's not like over the top or anything.
It's just funny. I don't understand. I like her a lot. She's she is a genuinely great actress. Everyone's great. Everyone's right. Like she is. I don't know why they didn't give her more to do if they got her outside of the fact that maybe because it was just so late that she got cast that it was too late to really do any significant rewrites once they got an actor that was really good. I don't fucking know.
I am guessing that basically none of these people return based on the fact that I forgot how many of them were even associated with this universe, but I hope that this isn't the last we see her, I guess. I don't know. Whatever.
The person she's an assistant to, of course, Ken Watanabe as Dr. Ishiro Serizawa. So and it's an homage guy. Serizawa, obviously from the original Godzilla Serizawa, but Ishiro is his first name for Ishiro Honda. So it's not meant to be the exact same character so much as like an homage amalgamation to that character, basically.
But if I'm going to be dramatic and I'm going to be over the top, like if you're going to do an homage, do an homage. This is like almost like insulting to give him the same name as Serizawa. Like and like Ken Watanabe is great, but I think Ken Watanabe has a similar story to some of these other like good actors in this movie where it's like, well, yeah, he's doing the best he can with what he gets, but it's not like they give him a significant role or they had to cut out everything they wanted to give him in a significant way. I'm not sure what the story is, but I'm guessing it's the latter.
I really wonder if he had stuff that was cut out.
The fact that he's even named Serizawa, I feel like implies that he had a bigger role at some point that was probably the person critical of the United States government, or at least the actions they were about to take.
Right. I feel strongly that there is stuff for him that was cut out.
Yeah.
Or decided to be left out early on at some point.
Yeah. And instead of making him this sort of like tortured scientist who is like carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders based on the knowledge he has or the weapon he's created or whatever, insert whatever, Godzilla scientist here. Instead, he comes across as like kind of like this dude who's willing to watch the world burn for the sake of nature, even though that's not really the takeaway of his character. I just think they don't flesh him out enough to really like fully, I think, demonstrate what he's trying to say in the movie, even as we get it. So I think the moments where he does say like, let them fight, just come across as like, okay, guy who's willing to let the city burn. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't think that's who he's supposed to be, even in the final version of the movie.
I think there's a lot of stuff that I like in a vacuum with him, like that line, the "let them fight" line. Obviously, it's like a meme for a reason. It is a great line.
Oh, is it really?
People use it all the fucking time. Yeah, I mean, anytime you ever see like two billionaires get into an argument, or like two major corporations, or like the AI company that was like that's like making the other AI company go into business recently, like let them, like the gif of them saying "let them fight."
I've probably seen it and never internalized it because I didn't know what it was from, or I didn't internalize it the first time.
Yeah, it's from that. Like I think that's great in a vacuum, and I think a lot of the fact that, I mean, I'm of two minds about it. On one hand, it does feel like it's sort of like they just got an obligatory Japanese character to be like, we're not all white in this movie. We respect Toho. See, look, we have a Japanese man in our main cast.
People will be mad if we don't have a Japanese person in our Godzilla movie.
Right. So he kind of feels like he's sort of filling a thankless role in that regard. Yeah. And they're probably giving themselves a pat on the back for including him. But on the other hand, the fact that he is there means that you can have that perspective. And it's just that they don't let him really voice that. You can tell that it's almost there. And actually, I think this quote from Watanabe, I think maybe points to that, because he said about the initial meeting with him accepting the role was that, and I quote, "If you are telling the Godzilla story, you cannot separate it from the nuclear element. And the first thing I asked was whether there was going to be the nuclear element. as that now in Japan it is a really sensitive problem. I was worried about how it could use that and how it could make that okay, but Gareth understood those feelings. So like he went into it with the understanding that there would be some kind of commentary about nuclear weapons and that there would be some sort of conversation about how complicated it is and how would you have a movie that involves bombing monsters with nuclear weapons and like not acknowledge the problematic aspect of that. And that's the only reason he agreed to be in the movie. And then you watch the movie and the character has like one half line about it that doesn't really actually say anything.
Yeah.
Just sort of talks around the fact that like, maybe I don't agree with this, but I won't tell you why and just go ahead and do it anyway.
Yeah. I would, maybe this is crazy. I would argue that this movie kind of says that nuclear weapons are fine. Or at least like not a bad thing.
Or at
neutral.
At worst, like maybe kind of ineffectual.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much same as any bomb that you miss with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's wild. That's a bummer that was his understanding, because I would read that the same way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I found it weird. I think the movie really does a disservice to him. He's
so frustrating too.
He's a great actor. I love it every time he's on screen.
Great voice.
Yeah.
So like criminal that they don't use him more just to let him talk more.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the stuff could have been solved if they just shifted more focus onto like Monarch. Yeah. Which I mean,
that is fascinating to me because I know there is a whole show called Monarch. You know what I mean?
And
like I know it's obviously
a
big deal.
And I like the show a lot. I do think the show deals with like more complexity about like working with an organization like that, and the moral ambiguity that can come with that. So like, there is stuff in the future that sort of deals with it. It's just it's interesting that this movie introduces this organization built to investigate kaiju, that the idea that like that humans are aware that there are ancient kaiju that have existed for a very, very long time. And that they're just this organization that's researching them and trying to keep it secret from the rest of the populace. But then they introduce that concept in this movie and don't really do anything with it because everyone who intersects with them, they're just sort of like, well, you're here, so I guess we'll tell you all our secrets now.
Right, because this movie isn't even about how it's not even criticizing the government lying to its people, which
that's
plenty
true.
Of movies get into. You know what I mean? Like, the whole
like, no, they were right.
Like,
they were right. We shouldn't have known about Godzilla. They were totally right.
Right. And the moment people do find out about it, they're like, well, cat's out of the bag. So, and then like, what's the point of having Monarch around anymore? If that's the point, like, I don't know.
Yeah. It's a weird choice.
Very bizarre.
I'll just run through some other interesting ones. Honestly, there's a lot of people who are like, big actor who doesn't really. David Strathairn is like the old military guy, the admiral who's like very well known for like a lot of prestige TV, won a bunch of Emmys.
Gotcha.
Gets in this movie, just plays a generic war admiral.
Oh yeah,
there's a lot of like TV actors who are in here too that I recognize, like that were in like anything from like supporting roles to cameos. Richard T. Jones is one of the military guys. I know him from Terminator, the Sarah Connor Chronicles, but he always plays a cop and stuff. He's been in like CSI Miami, Criminal Minds, The Rookie, etc. Like he's in a ton of stuff. And then there's a ton of Vancouver actors as well that you'll see in.
I bet you recognize all of them.
Yeah, because this was shot in Canada.
Yeah.
So like a lot of these actors you'll see in Vancouver TV shows. Patrick Sabongwai is the young military guy. Mm-hmm. He was a major character on The Flash. Hiro Kanagawa is one of the power plant scientists. He has literally been in like every Vancouver genre show since like the 90s. But also for us, Doug, he was the voice of Reed Richards in the 2006 Fantastic Four cartoon that we covered on Wall the Web Sappers. So he's in it. Ty Olsen.
I was going to say
Vancouver guy. Queer bear who recently came out.
Yeah.
He's known for being on like Supernatural. He was on the Twilight movies, apparently. I didn't know this.
He was in the Twilight movies. You know what the first thing I noticed Ty Olsen in was? I'm pretty certain, if I'm not crossing wires, he was the guard in X2. Magneto's thing. Yep. And he was like a schlubby guard, and then he gets like pinned up against a wall. And I was like, I see you, guard.
Yeah.
And have never forgotten about him.
Extremely hot, and the world rejoiced when it turned out he was marrying a man.
Yeah. And is he not credited? I don't see him anywhere on at least Wikizilla.
He wasn't on the wikis, but I think he is credited because he has speaking lines. I don't know
quite a few
why
of
he's
them.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, it's just funny. Gary Chalk, who he is a voice actor, well known for voicing Optimus Primal in like Beast Wars and Optimus Prime in other Transformers stuff. He is the older. I think his character's name is Stan. In the prologue, the older business guy working with Bryan Cranston.
Okay.
In the power plant.
Gotcha.
He just shows up in that role. Just fun. He's another Canadian guy.
Yeah.
And lastly, Akira Takarada, Ogata, did make a cameo that was filmed as an immigration officer. He had actually publicly appealed to have a part of this production, so it was cool that he got a role in it, and then his scene was cut in the movie.
How fucking dare they?
Yeah.
I don't even care if the scene had like made no sense or had no impact, but how dare they?
Yeah. He does still get a credit in the movie at the very least, even though he's not actually in it, which is more than the actor who plays Godzilla got. But it still sucks. Gareth Edwards has said afterwards that cutting the scene was his biggest regret. So like at least they acknowledge
Good, at
that.
least you know.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, one more actor thing. Carson Bold plays the Ford's son.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's funny. The only other significant thing he's done after this is being in the live action Fairly Odd Parents TV show that apparently exists now. Not the Drake Bell movies, but the TV show that exists. He's a character in that. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know they did a live action actual TV show for Fairly Odd Parents.
Is it like a show or is it like a TV movie?
No, it's like an actual show.
Like
I know the TV movies,
actually,
but they've done a show.
I'm looking at a picture from this and I absolutely I recognize this. Yes.
Yeah.
I locked it away somewhere.
Well,
and you've reminded me of it.
It's weird that exists.
How dare you?
But yeah. Yeah, but that's all I got. What do you want to talk about now? I talked enough. I need a break.
Well, okay. So, man, I don't know. So I think it's wild because we just went through the cast and talked about these characters and talked about how this movie like basically fails a bunch of these characters and like the relationships aren't strong and the stories of the characters aren't that strong. But regardless of that, I still walk away from this movie being like, I like this movie. And the reason for that is because it is, like you said at the top, a technically well-made movie. And I don't mean like technically in the sort of like, well, technically I'll give them credit. I mean like technical prowess.
Yeah, it's a beautiful looking movie.
It's a beautiful looking movie. Yeah. The music is great. The sound design is really awesome. And I think what's cool about it is like these spectacular moments paired with these unexpected sound design moments for an American special effects movie, right? So this movie allows moments to be quiet. It allows moments to be like, when they're not quiet, sort of like haunting, if there's not like music playing. I'm thinking of like the scene that everybody I'm sure talks about where they're like, they got the flares and they're diving into I remember that from the promotion. It's like so fucking cool. It's like on posters. So cool. It's such an iconic like image and like it's so cool. But it's not even just that. Like the shots they get of monsters in the background or emerging or like the way that they fight is really just like beautiful. And the reason I say that is like it's so good that I still walk away from the movie liking it despite feeling like it primarily fails its like human characters. Yeah. One thing that I thought was interesting, I don't normally do this for movies that we are going to talk about, but because I've seen this one, I was like a little bit more lax on this. But I was curious because I walked away being like, that was really cool, but I do feel like it was sort of empty, given how much I like it. Mm-hmm. And so I looked to see like, okay, the people who really love this movie, what is it they say about this movie? Like, what is it about this movie that's making them compare it to the best Godzilla movies, right?
Sure.
And what I thought was interesting is like, I saw a couple people mention something that seemingly resonated with people where they said that the movie is like about the insignificance of human affairs in the face of these like gargantuan monsters, the sort of like gods versus ants thing. And I have two thoughts on that. One, I think if that's what the movie is about, I think it's missing the point of a lot of Godzilla, because I don't think Godzilla ever is trying to divorce human affairs from like the monsters, at least from what I've seen. They often are intertwined in some way, or when they're not necessarily exploring that, they're exploring the consequences of that. I think the one movie I've seen so far that I wouldn't necessarily say that about is like Abira Horror of the Deep. And that's because that movie's like a fun beach romp in like a weird way. But that still has to do with like the relationship between humans and these monsters.
Right.
So to say that this movie is like about that sort of distance and the insignificance of human affairs, maybe, right? Like a movie about that is interesting to me. The second thing I have to say about that is I don't think that's what this movie is about. Or if that's what it was about, they rewrote the end of this movie to completely undercut that exploration. Because the end of the movie is not giving insignificance of human affairs, is not giving separation between gods and ants. Godzilla is keenly aware of the humans around him and the effect that he has had on the humans around him and the effect that they've had on him. So like maybe up until that point you could make that argument, but I think the movie itself punctuates in a way that says, no, that's not really what it's about. I'm curious to know what your thoughts on that as sort of like the thesis some people pull out and appreciate about this movie.
I think probably what that thesis comes from is more like I think that does come from Ken Watanabe's character. Because like the let them fight speech, I forget what the full speech is, but in the context for that, and a lot of the stuff that he has to say has a lot to do with the way that like humans can't change nature, right? That like nature's, no matter how hard we push back, there are certain things that like nature is just that we can't control, like weathering a storm, right? You can't just stop a storm, which I think does play into this idea that they're inspired by natural disasters like Hurricane Katrina, right?
And the fact that they fail at their plan to stop anything, right? So like they don't stop the bomb. The only thing they can do is the contingency plan of getting it far away. The bomb still goes off. The bomb that Serizawa disagrees with them using still goes off, but is unsuccessful.
Right. So like, I think that that's where that comes from, is sort of like the sort of reinvention of Godzilla as this ancient giant, essentially kind of a warring knight in a way, right? Like I know God kind of, but I think less of a god and more like a knight for Mother Nature in a weird way, right? So as soon as something destabilizes the balance that has been set out since the creation of the earth, that's when he gets deployed. And I think that's what that take is sort of responding to, is that like, you let them fight because this is their fight, not ours. This is nature taking its course. These creatures have come out, debalanced it. Godzilla comes out to restore the balance. We can't really do anything about it. But yes, to your point, this movie takes great pains to have Aaron Taylor Johnson help Godzilla and they create a whole parallel between the two where like when he passes out, Godzilla passes out. So clearly we're both supposed to see them as sort of like these heroic figures that are restoring balance somehow, which does undermine the idea that like the point of this movie is that nature will take its course. We have to stop trying to interfere and let nature restore its own balance, essentially.
Well, and then I think it's sort of weird to also then have, I mean, it might not be weird if you were thinking about a realistic response to that happening, but I think it is weird if that's the statement of the movie for then the general populace to then celebrate Godzilla as a hero that saved them as opposed to something that just balanced things out.
Or I think maybe the more nuanced,
like, no one really focuses on the fact that the San Francisco got fucking annihilated.
Right. And then I do think that like that's a good thing that Monarch addresses like much later. But I think that like a more nuanced view of that is less that like it's less the fully let them fight in that hands off guys, we should just stand back, let them do whatever they want. We're useless and worthless, just ants and their gods. I think that take is just wrong in the context of this movie, how it's portrayed. I think the more nuanced version of it is more like, we have to accept that this is the natural order. Stop trying to resist the fact that if these monsters show up, Godzilla is going to show up. And so instead we have to work with nature, therefore work with Godzilla and just readjust what we think we have control of, find the thing that we do have control of, which is helping Godzilla win.
And that to me feels like a nuanced difference between something that to me feels like a Godzilla story and something that doesn't feel like a Godzilla story. Because we've already seen stories that address the idea of man trying to control nature and nature sort of like fighting back or basically telling them you can't do that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that to me would feel like exactly in the Godzilla zone, right? Like there's not one Godzilla story like you were saying, but that is one that feels like in the realm. So yeah, I mean, maybe the people who are saying that are just like not sort of including the nuance of it, but I also don't entirely know if the movie lands exactly where you're talking either. I don't know. I might need to watch it from beginning to end with that sort of thought in mind, which I wasn't doing this time.
Yeah. I'm also curious how much of that maybe is informed by future movies, because I do think that future movies try to have a take on what they're doing, and maybe like those themes are more what those people are saying. I hadn't really given it a lot of thought like that.
Sure.
So like, I know you haven't seen them, so I don't want to spoil specifics anyway.
Yeah.
But like, I do think that maybe some of people's views of this movie are a little bit informed by how things go in future ones potentially.
Gotcha. I'll be curious to see, and I will be curious to watch this one again, sort of with that in mind. One thing I will say is I did see somebody sort of presenting that argument as a response to people criticizing this movie's failing of the characters, being like, well, it's not about the characters. It's actively not about the characters. Like,
well,
no, it's not.
In it so
no,
much.
it's not.
Like,
the characters are the focal
about?
point almost the entire time.
Yeah, what are you talking
about?
So,
I think bringing the nuance into the conversation is exactly what needs to happen, because I think some folks might have adopted that sort of thesis, not understanding maybe where it could have originated from.
I think that thesis applies to other Monsterverse movies, but it does not apply to this one.
Okay, got it.
Like the character thing, which you were saying, that it like isn't about the characters. Like that's not this movie at all.
No.
Yeah. This is just silly, but I like that the main timelines of this movie are 1954, original Godzilla movie, 1999, which is the year after the first American movie and the year the Millennium Era started, which is the year before this, and now 2014, the new era. I just think that's kind of fun.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I mean, the 1954 thing was like, you know, the most obvious one, I think, to folks. But the 99 one is like, yeah, that's good. I like that too. It didn't even occur to me. Speaking of the 1954 thing, it was surprising to me, and I don't think I would say that I like it, but this is all wrapped up in stuff I've already criticized as far as like this movie not saying a whole lot. It is interesting to me that their sort of origin is that the monsters already existed and retreated, and we accidentally woke them up, and then nuclear weapons became involved. And that nuclear weapons and testing is a cover-up for us trying to destroy Godzilla.
Yeah, it is a little weird when you think about it.
It's weird, right? I don't like it. I
don't like it.
I understand how they get to that point if they wanted these monsters to have existed the whole time and to just be dormant, right? Like, I kind of get where they get to that point, but I don't really understand, except for the conversation about the military and the inability to criticize the use of nuclear weapons on Japan.
Yeah.
I don't understand how you don't do the most obvious thing that the first one did, which is our use of nuclear weapons awakened monsters. If not created them, awakened them. You know?
It feels like an unnecessarily complex way to establish your world, and then kind of in an obligatory way include nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Like the nuclear weapons thing feels like an asterisk. Like, well, that's not like the real reason this happened. That was just like another thing that happened.
Yeah, it's a long walk to like not criticize nuclear weapons and weapons of mass destruction. It's also like a bit of a slap in the face, because I mean they do technically acknowledge Hiroshima, obviously, and then like, you know, as a result also like any other uses, but like it's wild that they just erase the actual history of the nuclear arms race through that origin story. Do you know what I mean? Like, so then where does the use of those weapons on Japan even fit into that history? So they used them and we all agreed that we shouldn't use them until we saw monsters? Or does the arms race still exist in this universe? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I guess. Yeah.
It's
yeah.
a weird alternate history to write.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it is a can of worms. It's open, I'm thinking too. This might be stuff that also gets explored in the Monarch TV show. Now that I think about it, because there's a lot of.
I'm excited to watch this Monarch TV show. Is what you're telling me.
But I don't know how much it like deals with that side of it so
Sure.
much as just like explores that sort of alternate history in a way, like because you're right. It is sort of, I don't know. It is weird given how tied to, this is so obvious to say, but it's weird given how tied to nuclear, commentary on nuclear war and the existence of nuclear weapons Godzilla is, to then like, I don't know, recontextualize it in a way that makes it just have nothing really substantially to do with Godzilla and only complicates the use of nuclear weapons in the real world. In a way that does kind of cynically just feel like they're trying to use as an excuse to not have to deal with it. Then it can be like, see, we mentioned nuclear stuff. Like, that's part of our movie, right? So like, knocked it off the to-do list that nuclear weapons are part of the conversation. But they don't say anything about nuclear weapons other than they used it.
Yeah.
And then, like the weird domino effect of sort of like, but then if all of this was a cover up, then like, what does that mean for every other use of nuclear weapons that has ever happened in the history of the world?
Because they don't deny that they use nuclear weapons in this universe, right? They're just trying to justify it through an alternate history. Then they don't actually explore, because like you could do this, right? Like, I'm not even saying this is an impossible route to go, because you can have an alternate history where the United States still used nuclear weapons on Japan and acknowledge like that sucked, and the whole world agreed not to do that, or at least the United States agreed never to do it again, right? And then a compelling choice would be like, okay, shit, we agreed we'd never use these, but then we met this big fucking walking mountain, and you have the classic dilemma of, do we use these or not, which we've seen in every generation of Godzilla movies we've watched so far, except now this one. So you still easily could do it, which makes me think you are 100% right that like, the reason they don't is because of the military's involvement, and the military probably specifically truly blocked any ability of them to address the consequences of nuclear weapons or fallout or war or anything.
Because I feel like they try to make subtext about a lot of the stuff that you're saying. It's just like, but it doesn't work within the text of the movie they're building. And I think also part of it too is that I think a thing that I think it's a little bit lost in this movie is that they are trying to have a lot of fun with the conspiracy theory type angle, right?
Sure.
Like the opening credits of the movie are all like redacted, blacked out, redacted pieces of text that then form the credits list. I think it's really fun. And that's overlaid with like, Godzilla getting bombed, right? So it's sort of like, we're already setting you up for like, conspiracies are at the core of this universe, that like the stuff that you are being told by the American government is actually wrong, and like this is a lot of classified stuff that only certain people know about. And then Bryan Cranston's character obviously is like your typical movie conspiracy nut who's like, this wasn't an accidental disaster, there was something else that is being covered up here. I think that gets lost once he's dead and all of it's revealed, and Monarch's like, here's all our secrets, everyone have fun. That gets lost, but I do think that is meant to be part of it. And these days any conspiracy thing is kind of like tainted, unfortunately, but the idea of like fictional fun conspiracy theories where it's like the government's covering up monsters and aliens and shit, that stuff is fun. It's always really fun. It sucks that we live in a world where that can't really be fun anymore, but the fictional version of that is very fun. And I think that when the movie plays into that and leans into that with Bryan Cranston, I think it is really fun. So I think that going into it, I think that's probably more what they were thinking about, is sort of like, wouldn't it be fun if these monsters always existed? And then that leads them down the path of like, well, this is why this happened. This is why this happened. This is why these nuclear tests happened, was to cover up these monsters. I think that all of that makes sense. So and then I think maybe that accidentally kind of results in like completely destroying any nuclear themes that the original Godzilla had,
I don't think it's an accident though, because I think you can do everything you just said and make it be Monarch is a morally questionable or is making the hard decisions type of conspiracy.
Sure.
You know, like
yeah,
we recognize that these weapons do have an impact on the environment around them, but also that's a walking mountain that breathes fire. You know, like I think you could still do all that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's true. It is weird.
It's a strange thing to encounter in this environment of Godzilla movies.
It very much is. And it's like, of course it comes from the American Godzilla movie.
Right.
It's like, it doesn't feel like a far cry from the 98 movie being like the French people, their nuclear testing did it, not America.
Yeah.
Why would we be responsible for anything bad with nuclear weapons?
Yeah,
that's never happened before.
It's so bizarre. Yeah.
Is it bizarre?
No, it's not.
Is it bizarre?
It's not unexpected, but it is bizarre in a global context.
Yeah. And in a Godzilla movie when that was
right.
like the whole reason they existed.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you. It's definitely a bit of a black mark on this movie, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, if it comes down to asking two separate questions, is this, a great Godzilla movie and is this a great monster movie? Like, it scores far lower on is it a great Godzilla movie and far higher on is it a great monster movie? Like,
I agree.
It's a beautiful, beautiful, unexpected monster movie that does things lots of other monster movies, including Godzilla movies, haven't done that I've seen yet, and I've only seen a third of them at this point, a third of them at this point. So, maybe there are ones I just haven't seen that do it, but I think the specific type of artfulness that this movie has, I'd be surprised to see in most other Godzilla movies, even the ones that I love and think are very artful,
I agree. Yeah. Other just random things. I'm just going to run down my list. Mm-hmm. All that cum that the soldiers find on the Russian sub that the MUTOs somehow left on them. I don't understand what the deal with that was. I thought that was really funny though.
It doesn't really biologically make any sense, but
like,
sure.
I'm like, where did that fluid come from? But it's funny that it just looks like a bunch of fucking cum on a Russian sub.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, whatever. But the serious thing, everything with the flooding stuff, like I think we even mention in the 98 one where it's sort of like the idea
where I said
of
if Emmerich made the movie now, there would be cool flooding sequences and tidal wave sequences, and this movie does it.
Yeah, Godzilla makes landfall and creates a giant tidal wave that creates a lot of destruction. The ominous bit of like looking at the beach and suddenly the tide is like so far out and the water's gone because it's about to create a flood. I do think it's weird that like it's in Hawaii, I think, right?
Yes.
And they make it a point to position like white tourists being the one who notice it and are scared at the center to be like, you can tell it's serious because the white people are the ones that are actually really scared. Like I thought that was really strange.
Well, I mean, they didn't. They filmed the whole thing in Vancouver, right?
I think that they did. Yeah, you're probably right.
There's that, and I also think it's weird. Like, there's a few moments like this, and this is one of them. I think there's actually two in Hawaii where like they have the little girl and the dad who like see it first, right? This like these white tourists. And they run with everyone else. And the movie is like not afraid to kill lots of people in this movie due to the monsters, due to tidal waves, due to whatever. But the girl and the dad who discovered it, I guess we're supposed to be emotionally attached to, or maybe because there's a young child. So they get to escape into like a random mall or something. And the water just goes right past them. There's another moment where we're like, for some reason, we see a dog that is like looking at the impending tidal wave and is like barking and scared. And we see that it's like tied to a tree or something. And so I'm like, this is fucking wild. Are they about to just like kill a dog in this Godzilla movie? Mm-hmm. And then no, like a second later, it's just not attached to the tree and is like running away and we never see it again. Like, what was the point of that? What did we do? Then there's like a few little weird moments like that. Throughout the movie where I'm like, was this supposed to be like an emotionally resonant moment? I don't understand how this ended up in here.
Yeah, some of that sounds like some studio note bullshit.
Yeah,
honestly.
just like like it's a disaster movie, Like we know people are going to die. You can't distract us from the fact that dozens of people are dying because this one guy and his little daughter got into a store quickly enough.
It's very silly.
It's really weird. The movie's bleak. Just let it be bleak,
Right. And all the actual, like these sweeping wide shots of destruction are really beautifully rendered.
Oh,
like, they look really good. I think the movie does a really good job of like showing trails, like because you're following
man.
kaiju going very like walking cross country and just seeing the trail of destruction behind them. Like it's so well, like the details in it are really, really incredibly well
when
done.
you first get that sort of like helicopter shot of the MUTO, you don't see it, but you see the trail going out into the ocean or whatever, like crawling out from the hole.
Mm-hmm.
Really cool. Like it's just a really cool sort of unfolded shot.
Yeah. All that shit looks really cool. I think a lot of stuff they do with Godzilla also before he's made his big appearance are really cool. Like they do really fun things with like body close-ups where like sometimes you can't tell if it's like the tail or if it's like a back or head or something like that. And there's like a bit when he's like flying under the aircraft, or not flying. Oh my God. The opposite of that, swimming, when he's swimming under the aircraft
like
carrier.
Silent basically. Like everyone's quiet and like holding their breath and they just see him go under because like he's underwater. They're not going to hear him. It's so cool. I love that shot. I love that moment. Really good. Super effective.
Really cool. Yeah, a lot. I mean, and again, the sense of scale is really, really good. So it's like they find really cool creative ways to show Godzilla before they fully show him and utilize the fact that if it is this fucking giant colossal monolith of a creature, you're usually not going to get a full shot of him, Well,
and I think they handle it in a way that the 98 movie kind of flubs it, where I think I know that they wouldn't explain it this way, but I think I'm just going to disagree with them. I think the reason they don't show Godzilla all that much as a whole creature is because I don't think they would have done a great job at it. And so like, I think they were trying to convey scale, but it just feels like they're hiding the monster. And in some ways they actively were. In this one, it really does feel like a build up to the reveal, right? Like they can only show so much until we get to the point where you just have to show it. And then after that point, you get to see it plenty, I love the moment, speaking of when it's in the water doing shit, I love when they're looking at the water and they understand that Godzilla's there, but when something begins to emerge, they don't realize right away that it's like his tail. So when they do realize it's its tail, they're like, oh fuck, that means his body's behind us and like 10 times bigger. Like, I think that's so cool.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
Really, really cool. Godzilla is kind of the star of this movie, despite not being in it a lot, just in that they get everything so right with him.
Yeah.
Like the way that they utilize him, the way that they show him, the way that he's rendered, and the way that he's like characterized in a way. Like, I think they really nail it. I love this version of Godzilla in this movie specifically.
Me too.
I think it really works.
Yeah. Atomic breath is cool. Love that he blasts. I mean, I think it's always cool when Godzilla uses his atomic breath directly into another monster's mouth or face.
So sick.
So cool. So cool. And then fucking rips the thing's head off.
Dude, it's such a violent end for these creatures that like I feel really bad for.
Okay, let's talk about it.
Okay. Yes.
Because I think many other Godzilla movies would say something about that. And I think
I think so too.
I think this is basically making a similar mistake, I think, to the 98 movie, where there are some monsters who do pretty much nothing wrong as we are meant to understand them. And they are literally trying to just reproduce. They are literally nesting in the city, which is exactly what Godzilla in 98 was doing.
Yep.
And in 98, they eradicate Godzilla's babies. And in this movie, they eradicate the MUTOs babies. Like, it's weird that happened again, and that once again, no one really seems to comment or be conflicted about it. Yeah. That I was not expecting. Of all the things,
it's weird.
To echo the 98 movie, that was not the thing I was expecting.
I feel like the fallback that the movie's perspective has, I don't agree with it, but I think the fallback that they have is that it's like, well, if this movie is about nature has to run its course, let them fight, restore the balance stuff, then like it's not that the humans are eradicating the species. It's just that like, well, this is like in nature, animals kill each other all the time, and that's just going to happen, and you just have to let that happen. I feel like that's kind of what that movie's sort of falling back on.
But Godzilla doesn't destroy the babies. Aaron Taylor Johnson does, just that's like true. The humans do in 98.
Oh boy, you're totally right.
He specifically goes back to do it.
That completely unravels that defense 1,000%. You're so right.
Really weird that they do it. And it's
that's such a good point.
I think the fallback is that we are supposed to treat the MUTOs as like sort of the bad guys because Godzilla is like our hero. So it feels
But Godzilla
worse.
also like if the MUTOs are all their destruction is collateral because they are just trying to get together and kiss and mate and raise their family. Godzilla also all of the damage he causes is also just collateral trying to do his job. So like what makes them different?
Look, I agree with you. But they're scarier looking and they have fangs and they sound creepier.
Well, and I guess they have a lot of eggs, so there would be a lot of babies that would cause a lot of destruction. I think too.
I say that because I think that a lot of I think it would be easy to walk away and if you just watch it and then move on to be like, oh yeah, there was Godzilla who was sort of like the hero and the good guys, and then there are these like bad sort of like weird alien guys. I think it wouldn't be that weird to walk away because that's sort of like the vibe. But the movie specifically has a moment where the male one like feeds the female one,
and they rub faces together.
So they basically have like they basically, if we always compare these monsters to cats, they have their little like movie kiss where like it's two cats sort of like booping noses and rubbing up against each other. Yeah. So like why include
They're really
that?
Cute
I don't
and
know.
Sweet.
It's so strange.
It feels like the equivalent of Zilla in the 98 movie nuzzling the body of her young, and then immediately it's like, woohoo, we're killing Godzilla. Like it's giving that. Like it's really strange.
I guess because this one is as a whole much bleaker than the 98 one. It doesn't stand out in the same way where like the 98 one is like, I don't know, it's a comedy, right? So it's like weird when they eradicate a species and are sort of like, yay. And then have this weird out of character for the movie, gentle moment between Godzilla and its dead baby. But this one is already super bleak. So I guess if one of the takeaways is sort of like, nature balances itself out, and sometimes the result of that is sort of like giving into that and accepting the bleakness of nature and the brutality of nature. Sure. But I don't know.
Yeah. It's a level of mean-spiritedness that is not common in most Godzilla movies.
Yeah. I don't think so. Have there, am I like forgetting a Godzilla movie we've watched from Japan that does anything equivalent to this, where they're eradicating or they're like going out of their way to like, effectively like euthanize or abort like
I think
I don't know.
The ones that we have seen I feel like have done a good job of avoiding kaiju having children unless it's Mothra.
Yeah.
And I think that by because you could make arguments of like the sentience or whatever of other kaiju throughout the movies, but like they usually will confront that and deal with it, right?
Yeah. And it's usually a one-on-one fight, or it is monsters versus monsters.
Right.
Like what like GMK is pretty brutal in that Godzilla like annihilates other monsters in like a pretty violent way.
Yeah.
But like,
you are supposed to be rooting for those monsters that he kills.
Right. You are supposed to feel like it is brutal, and you are supposed to feel bad for those monsters.
Yeah, this is like it's a victory when humans abort a bunch of babies. It's weird, and I think that the American movies really should have just avoided the babies thing. Honestly.
I don't know why they keep doing it.
I don't know why they keep doing it.
Yeah,
I mean, America does have a weird obsession with unborn children, so well, you know,
I don't even want to like try to draw parallels and examine and put any sort of politics onto that. That's fucking wild. But you're right.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
It's weird. It's all weird. But that also leaves a weird bad taste in my mouth. Ultimately, but Godzilla's still cool, so it's fine.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Let's see. I think it's cool that they do EMPs to turn off electricity. I think that's a really nice touch too.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. It caused some, created some fun conflicts. Sorry, not to open up another fucking can of worms like this late into the podcast. Elizabeth Olsen's character gives her son to her friend, I think her name is Laura.
Yes.
To go with them on the school bus.
Yes.
We then see a cool sequence of the school bus being stuck on the bridge in the traffic jam as Godzilla inadvertently destroys some of it, causes issues, and it's badass school bus driver like trying to, getting through traffic, right? all that stuff's fun. I dig that. It's totally cool. It's fun to see like Godzilla fight through the perspective of kids on a school bus.
Yeah.
Where did Laura go? She's not, it's all children on that bus. She disappeared. There's no adults on that bus.
No.
Why is it a bus full of children suddenly? Like it's like they're like, well, it's a school bus. It's only children.
Yeah.
Where did Laura go? What happened to Laura?
It was either a late rewrite or something to include passing the kid off to Laura or something, or
like a deleted scene or something
there's
like that.
Deleted. Yeah. I mean, ultimately the answer to why any of that is like, it's just another way to get cool shots and perspectives, in which case just don't have a character we care about there. It would have been fine to just have a bus full of children watching a monster fight. You know, the only reason we're paying any much more attention to it than that is because they had this whole moment where Elizabeth Olsen leaves the kid with a friend on this bus. So she is like, it's, I guess in a way it's supposed to like echo several things in this, where it's like somebody putting someone they love inadvertently into like a dangerous situation, but like, that's not what they're doing. They're just getting a cool shot, which is fine. Just get the cool shot. Yeah, it's weird. Also, I think that actress is another Vancouver actress that I'm not really
about it. I think she was Maggie Sawyer on a few episodes of Smallville, actually, if I remember correctly. But anyway,
all the shots on
justice
there.
Justice for Laura. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, where'd Laura go? Bring back
I
Laura.
I hope I get her name right. I'm not even sure. I'm not even confident that's her name.
I'm pretty sure you're right. Or Lauren. You were like very in the ballpark
Lauren.
if it's not.
Yeah.
Exactly that. But I do think you're right. Everything on that bridge looks cool as fuck. The sequences are cool. It's as artfully done as like every other thing in the movie. So
yeah. This is just a fun thing. I will just credit Wikizilla if you want to go down a fun little rabbit hole. There's like a poster for a fictional kaiju movie in the beginning in Ford's room when he's a kid.
Yes.
Has a bunch of Easter eggs on it. It was totally made up. It's all references to this movie. Oh. The Japanese title translates to "Let Them Fight," which is
that's
that
cool.
line from later.
Yeah.
And the monsters kind of look like the MUTOs. And let's see, one of them is shooting basically what looks like atomic breath. The movie mentions Japan, Hawaii, California, Nevada, and Vancouver are locations that are either in the movie or where it was filmed.
Yeah. The
cast is just the Japanese names for the cast of this movie at the bottom of it.
That's cool.
So yeah, it's all basically just a homage to this movie. And Mothra's name is on the like a tank in Ford's room as well. Like what he probably had a butterfly or something like that.
Got it. I mean, I was wondering if there were going to be any sort of Easter egg type things in this movie, because I wouldn't have been surprised if they just didn't have any, because it is, a very serious, it takes itself very seriously. It is bleak. It is, it doesn't really have a ton of references outside of like historical references. So I wouldn't have been surprised if you just said there weren't any. Speaking of all the cities, it is so funny to me the specific way that they display locations and years in this movie feels so mid 2010s, because Winter Soldier does like the exact same thing in like the exact same way with like big sans serif, like, locations in the middle of the screen.
It's very like Fringe too. They did a lot of that.
Did they really? I mean, it looks good.
Yeah.
It's not bad. It's just funny because it feels like a very specific slice of time or whatever.
Yeah, it is very funny. I think the last little sort of note that I had, I think, was I do like that this movie just Godzilla gets up, wearily walks away. Everyone's like, is he the savior of a city? Dives into the ocean, and it just cuts to black and it's over.
Yeah, I dig that.
Post credits bullshit. I think I was thinking a lot about, we talked about the cinematic universe at the top of this, and that'll obviously be a later conversation for later movies. But I do think that this movie, this watch through, I'm like, this really does feel a lot like what Iron Man felt like in 2008, in that it like that original Iron Man, it's almost quaint to go back and watch it, because you can see where the DNA of like the tone of the MCU comes from in that movie. And there's obviously like, they have the little post credits thing with Sam Jackson. Other than that, it is a totally self-contained movie that is telling a very self-contained, straightforward story. And then it just sort of, it ends on a very open-ended ending with a clear cut to black. It's like the story is over. There's plenty more to it. But if you just stopped that movie and never had another Iron Man after it, it would stand alone and be a very good movie on its own. but it still had enough sort of little bits in its DNA that you could build a cinematic universe off of it. This movie feels very similar to that in that it is so self-contained. If it was a standalone movie, I think it would function extremely well as a standalone Godzilla movie that just ends here. It just has enough background that it's set up and things you could explore later on if you wanted to, that it's easy to build off of. And I think that was very, very smartly done from that sort of both corporate and creative perspective when they were making this.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Like, they could have ended this movie where it ends and just made another Godzilla movie that is technically not connected, and it wouldn't have felt weird. Yeah.
Anything else about this Godzilla movie?
I don't think so. I am excited to go back and just like look at it again. Like, it's just a pretty movie. So
very pretty movie.
Yep.
Yeah. A couple predictions.
Sure.
For the Monsterverse. For the Monsterverse. Okay, you've already alluded to this. Do you think any human characters from this movie will appear again? And if you do, what are your guesses?
I mean, I don't. I just feel like I would recognize. I feel like I would know that any of them are like attached to a franchise or like franchise players. But what I would like to see is more of both of the Monarch characters, because I think Serizawa is done really poorly in this one, and I would like a little bit of redemption for that character. Sure. And I also think that I'm drawing a blank on her name. Oh, Sally Hawkins.
Sally Hawkins
is just like not done justice, probably because she was a late casting. So those are the two I would like to see most. I have no interest in seeing like any of the actual main protagonists again.
God, no.
Nor do I think
you don't want any more from the Brody family. No, the famous important Brody family.
So those are the ones that I feel most confident I would know if they were in more movies, because I just feel like it would be hard for me not to know that Elizabeth Olsen does another Godzilla movie. Right. So if someone told me there were more, if there were characters that carried over, I'd assume it was Monarch, and I also want it to be Monarch.
Sure.
Anyone else? No, I can't imagine.
I know you don't exactly remember, but what movies from the Monsterverse can you name?
There is a Godzilla versus Kong. I know that. Obviously, there's Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. There's a King of the Monsters, isn't there? There's a Godzilla King of the Monsters or something like that. And then I'm assuming Skull Island is one of them. I feel like I'm probably forgetting one, or honestly two. I don't even know. I don't know how many there are.
Okay. I mean, hey, that's promising. Like, that's fun for the listener that you don't even know how many movies there are.
I genuinely don't. I'm like trying to think of like how many movies have happened, and I just don't. It's funny because I just wasn't really paying attention to Godzilla movies prior to this podcast. Like, I knew they happened.
Yeah.
But I think if anybody if anyone thinks we're exaggerating the premise of this podcast, we're truly not.
Yeah, even when you've seen some of the movies in the universe, you still don't even know which ones.
Right.
Yeah. It's so funny that you've seen New Empire and have not seen anything else.
Unbelievable. Other than this. It's just truly wild, the difference between...
I thought you'd seen Kong Skull Island. You haven't seen that?
I must have, right?
But obviously don't remember it.
I don't remember.
If you did. Maybe you will.
I know I've seen every King Kong proper. I don't know if I have seen Kong Skull Island.
Okay. Well,
I guess we'll see when we get there.
Yeah, we'll see when we get there. You know Kong, obviously, but do you know any other Toho kaiju that appear in future Monsterverse movies?
If I know them from New Empire, should I say so?
Oh, yeah, go for it. No, it's because you definitely know that establishes it.
I know that Mothra is in the universe because I've seen her. I believe some movie at some point has a Ghidorah, because I believe it was a big deal that Ghidorah was going to be in one of them. Other than that, I'm not confident. I would assume there is a Rodan, because I feel like you could do cool shit with a Rodan. I'm guessing there is no Anguirus. I'm guessing there is no Baragon. I know there's a Tiamat, I think, because I think there was a Tiamat in New Empire. But the thing that's interesting, Derek, is like the new Empire specifically has like a moment where they're like, here's a holographic globe with a bunch of points on the map with all of the monsters. And like, I don't know who they are. So I could have seen a bunch of monsters I now know and would have had no idea. So
yeah, God, what an insane movie.
I know. I'm guessing those big three though. I'm guessing, I know for sure Mothra. I'm like 99% sure Ghidorah's in one of them. And I would be shocked if Rodan was not.
Got it. Cool. Okay.
It would be so funny if like Ibira was in the next movie.
That would be, yeah.
That would crack me
That would
up.
be really funny.
And it just looks exactly the same.
They actually just returned to Suitmation for that.
Incredible. But only for Ibira.
For only Ibira, right, exactly. Yeah. Well, we're not there yet. In a couple of weeks, on February 27th, we're going to be doing Shin Godzilla.
Ooh.
This is the first film in the Reiwa era, a completely standalone Godzilla film. This is one, well, obviously we'll talk about in the episode, but I know this is one that you have seen before.
Yes.
But I'm curious what your memory of it is. Do you feel like you have a strong memory of this one?
I don't have a super strong memory of the human side of things, but Shin Godzilla is like pretty impossible to forget. So
how could you forget?
What I want to say, I remember very much how that movie made me feel, right? So I remember watching it, and this, I mean, Shin Godzilla might have been only like the third Godzilla movie I'd ever seen, probably.
Sure.
Or it depends on whether I watched 2014 first or not, because Shin was like very closely after this, right?
2 years afterwards, yeah.
So who knows? It depends on whether I did actually watch this with Vicky or if I waited until later. But I remember watching Shin Godzilla. I very much had the annoying reaction of like, oh shit, this is like a serious Godzilla movie. Wow, I'm glad they did a serious one. Like, annoying, right? But I don't remember too much about the people, but I remember probably having that reaction because I was surprised at like how focused it probably was on the human characters. I feel like it probably has reporters or something like that, like very on the ground type people. But I mean, the big thing is like I remember the monster most of all.
Of course.
Of course. If people haven't seen Shin Godzilla, it might be good to tune out for like 30 seconds because I'm very confident about what I'm going to say next. I know that Shin Godzilla has several stages, and I know that Shin Godzilla has 2 fucking heads, that its tail is a second head, and that it doesn't just have atomic breath, it has like fucking lasers shooting out of like its body in every direction or whatever. Like, and it's also in pain. Like, it is in pain. It is a horrifying creature, and people are just like, it is just, everyone is just witnessing this writhing, horrible creature.
Yeah. Also an insane movie, but in a very different way.
Yeah. I'm so excited to rewatch it, especially because the human stuff is what I forget, and now I recognize every Godzilla has like really cool, human stuff. It's like one of the things.
I think some of the themes of that movie are very, very interesting. So I don't have any other questions because I feel like you got the most of that on lock. So
yeah,
cool. Well, that will be really fun. I think that'll be a really interesting one. We've got a guest for that one as well. So can't wait for it. If you'd like to find other queer creators who talk about media, check out the Glitterjaw Queer Podcast Collective at glitterjaw.com. Follow us on Blue Sky at Glitterjaw and Instagram at GlitterjawPods. But Doug, if people want to find you and everything you're working on, where's the best place to do that?
You can find me all over the place at Ikkybooley, ICKYBOOLEY. You can also listen to me weekly on a podcast with Derek called Walloping Web Snappers, where we dive into every Spider-Man cartoon ever made. And you can listen to me twice a month on a show called Novel Gaming, where my friend Katie and I catch up on all the books and video games and sometimes other media we've been enjoying lately. What about you, Derek?
Sure, you can find me in most places at Derek B. Gale. You can also find my other podcast on Glitterjaw. I have Gimmicks, which I do with my co-host David, where we look at high concept and experimental structure-breaking gimmicky episodes of TV. And I also have Lee Carvalho's Potting Challenge, which I do with my friend Tommy, where we are looking at Simpsons video games chronologically with pop culture history and video game history and Simpsons history as well. And also check out, I occasionally do a show called Toku Thursday on the Sci-Fi Explosion Twitch feed. It's a co-stream with Sci-Fi Explosion where we show tokusatsu shows and movies as well as vintage Japanese commercials. I'm sure we will do some reruns of them soon. Join our Patreon at patreon.com/wallopingwebsnappers. That is, of course, the name of our Spider-Man podcast, but that supports everything Doug and I do together. We have many bonus episodes that have and will be continuing to come out about related to Godzilla in one way or another. I think this month we have one on the movie The Last Dinosaur, which came up during our conversation with Sean Pryor, who did the Kaiju Unleashed book. It's a movie that neither of us were aware of before, but looked really interesting just from the picture and had some actors that we liked in it. So check that out on our Patreon for just a little bonus episode on another Kaiju Tokusatsu movie. Check out our Discord if you want to chat with us. You can email us at podcast@gmail.com. Rate, review, and subscribe on all your podcast platforms. And as I said, join us on February 27th as we dive into the beloved and pretty disgusting 2016 revival of Godzilla in Japan with Shin Godzilla.
Yes. See you then.